Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. My name is Preston Jacobs, and I live in Santo Domingo, and we're talking about ice and fire and whatever else this evening, because I don't know, some people, people are into that shit. Um, so let's talk about something that I don't know. I think every fan at some point gets interested in the 5 year gap, and um, a little bit, um, and then it kind of goes away. But I go in and out of these little phases of thinking about it, only because I've been thinking about and writing about like the creation of feast and dance and the order of chapters and things like that, and George's writing process. Um, so, in case you guys don't know, the 5 year gap is something that happened. George originally wanted to have a 5 year time skip in between Storm and the books that came after. The reason that this came about was when starting the story, George wanted time to pass quicker. Um, he started the kids out young, but he wanted this to be a long multi-generational story where Sansa is growing old and having children, and people's kids are going to get involved in the war and all of this stuff. It was going to take. The reason the kids are so young in the first book is because he was expecting many years to pass, and so he wanted a long life for them. When he actually got to writing, the flow of the story just didn't go that way. And as you see, like, a Game of Thrones takes a little over a year, but then A Clash of Kings is 6 months, and then A Storm of Swords is like 4 months. George started writing, time started passing slower in the text, not faster. And so there's some dispute on whether or not his decision came while he was writing Storm or after. I suppose it's not that important, but the way the Storm ends, all of the POV characters are in a pretty good place to time jump. Arya has just arrived at the House of Black and White, so she could be training for 5 years. Jon is at the Wall. He can be Lord Commander for 5 years. Dany is a Marine. She can be Queen for 5 years. Sansa is in the Vale. She can be, studying under Littlefinger for 5 years. Some of them, I mean, Sam could be anywhere. I don't think he thought about Sam, but you could have pushed him to the Citadel and him being at the Citadel for 5 years, or he could keep him at the Wall for 5 years. It's not that important. And then Davos, you don't know Davos could be anywhere. You could put him anywhere. And that's pretty much, that's that everybody. I'm trying to think of, Tyrion. Tyrion would be living at Illyrio's place for 5 years, which, Daenerys spent a year there. So it's not that big a deal. And so George got to the point where, so he wanted to do this 5 year time skip because he had fucked up advancing the kid's age and passing the time in the story. And so he decides he wants to do a 5 year time skip, but then he also realizes that the time skip wouldn't make sense with regards to the Ironborn and the Dornish, that there were certain reactions that they had in the plot, for instance, the crowning of Euron and the death of Oberyn, that required immediate action. That it wouldn't make any sense for 5 years to go by and then the Sand Snakes to wanting to make a big deal about Oberyn's death. So he knew he needed to talk about the Dornish and the Ironborn, not in a 5 year gap sense. So he came up with the idea of the mega prologue. Originally, the prologue to A Feast for Crows was going to be a very large prologue of many different characters in Dorne and the Iron Islands, and that would catch up that section of the world, and then we would jump to the 5 year gap. And of course, that mega prologue eventually got broken out, which is why we have because it was all in prologue, he wasn't worrying about POVs and keeping to one POV, but this is why we have the POV explosion. like why there's an Aerys Oakheart and an Arion and an Hota and an Asha and a Victorian and an Aeron. You know, he didn't care. He was just like, oh, it's all going to be in a mega prologue. And so, but then he realized the mega prologue wasn't working. And so he pushed them into regular chapters. And then he started writing. He was working on the mega prologue, and he's working on a few chapters. And he specifically says that he was having trouble with Jon and Cersei. And then he decided to abandon the 5-year gap concept fairly early. It was around October of 2001. And then he went on doing different things. So a lot of people make a big deal about the 5-year gap and saying, well, what's still in there? For instance, there's a theory that Darkstar was originally Edric Dane, and that they had to change him to Darkstar because the 5-year gap was abandoned. That is probably a myth. That we have no evidence of that. And in fact, if he's writing the mega prologue and Darkstar is in the mega prologue, there'd be no need to advance the age, because the mega prologue was specifically designed to be not 5-year gapped. It was specifically designed to be in the period of time between Storm and Feast. So like there's various myths about the 5-year gap. One being, that Darkstar was Edric Dane, and no, absolutely not. Darkstar was not Edric Dane. Like, there's a chance that I will concede that Edric Dane being young in A Storm of Swords and now disappearing from the story might be because of the 5-year gap, that they were expecting Edric Dane, a 12-year-old, to be 17 and be important all of a sudden after the 5-year gap. But I don't buy that the character of Darkstar was supposed to be Edric Dane in any way. So but the question is okay, if not things like Darkstar, are there any other remnants of the 5-year gap that are still in the story? And, I would say that they're very few and far between. George hadn't gotten very far on Feast Dance when he abandoned the 5-year gap. And from what we can tell, based on Cushing Library and readings and things like that, the chapters, the first chapters that George wrote that might have been affected by the 5-year gap would be, if I were to guess, Daenerys 9, which George has said was the first Daenerys chapter he wrote, which is Daznak's Pit. Jon 1, and because it's the beginning of the Jon story. And he said he was having trouble with Cersei. And I would guess that that he had started Cersei on Cersei 3, which is Tommen's wedding. If you read the Cersei story, it doesn't make sense. Like, Cersei 1 is about finding Tywin's body, and Cersei 2 is that the burning of the Tower of the Hand? I have to check that. No, it's Tywin's wake. I'm sorry. I think they burn the tower in the wedding chapter. So I would say that if we're talking about what might have been written before the 5-year gap, we essentially have like Jon 1, maybe parts of Jon 4. That would be Jon's like council with Stannis where they're doing battle planning. Maybe pieces of that. Daenerys 9, and maybe you could argue some Daenerys 1, some intro, and maybe some Cersei 3. But we generally and our Dornish and Ironborn stuff. But the Dornish and Ironborn stuff is supposed to take place in the past anyway, so there's not much 5-year gap in there, right? So the only places I could kind of see, and we can look at like what chapters George wrote in like first, and so like conceptually maybe he had some things, but we know that early George had not even started on other stuff. I mean, there's a chance maybe he could have been working on a little bit of Arya or Sansa or something like that. Maybe fragments of a Jaime, but he had not begun writing Davos. He had not, Tyrion. There's not much that makes sense about the early Tyrion chapters, because there's nothing in the Tyrion chapters, the first Tyrion chapters, that suggests that Tyrion's been there a long time, living at the house a long time. They tend to be descriptions of the house and interactions with, say, the sex worker that are fairly new. So I would say Jon 1, Cersei 3, Dany 9. Now, and when I say Cersei 3, the first part, because I don't think it makes sense to have the burning of the tower after the 5-year gap. You would definitely burn the tower before the 5-year gap. But when I say the first part of Cersei 3, I mean Tommen's wedding. And I think Tommen's wedding makes sense in that when Cersei is when you read Tommen's wedding, there's a few places where she talks about happenings in the Riverlands, not many, but for the most part, it's just talking about people at the wedding. Oh, this Tyrell is here, this Tyrell is here, this Tyrell is there. And there's nothing that really actually places it in time. It could be after a 5-year gap. Additionally, when she stares at Tommen at the wedding, she's thinking about Joffrey a lot and thinking about Joffrey's death. And so Tommen would be about 13. And so she'd be starting to look like Joffrey. And so he would be at a similar age to Joffrey at his wedding and Joffrey's wedding. And so you'd kind of be ending A Storm of Swords with Joffrey's wedding and beginning A Feast for Crows with Tommen's wedding. And there'd be of a similar age, and Cersei would make these connections. And so I would guess that maybe, in a very loose sense, that there might have been Tommen's wedding portions that were thought about in a in a 5-year gap sense, and with Jon, I think that Tommen's wedding is interesting when we think about Dany. But with Jon, I think Jon is really weird because Stannis is at the Wall, and in many ways, it would be incredibly weird for Stannis to have been hanging at the Wall for 5 years, not making much progress, considering he's like, war. Let's get going. And George specifically said the 5-year gap would have been a 5-year autumn. That they would have not had winter cycled into spring and summer again and be waiting for winter again. The plan was a 5-year autumn. And so Stannis facing facing winter coming is just lingering at the Wall for 5 years. But meanwhile, that first Jon chapter, there's definitely feelings and things that happen in the Jon story that happen so quickly that they don't really make sense. Like the need and speed to repair all of the forts on the Wall happens at a pace that's way too fast. And the Wrong Way Rangers, making it to Last Hearth and back, and his communications and stuff like that. The way it's written, it's way too fast. It's only a couple weeks, and so much stuff is happening at the Wall. So I would imagine that there's some sort of, elements of the fact that that Stannis was actually there a lot longer, and things were he had moved in and taken over. And in fact, when the draft, the Honeybird went to the Cushing Library, Honeybird found that the editor put in in my mind, Jon Snow was elected Lord Commander 10 years ago, because that's when A Storm of Swords came out. You need to put in a little more about how this event just happened, because the editor was actually getting the feeling that a long time had passed in Jon 1. So I suspect that a lot of Jon 1 is like that. There are a few other things I'd like to highlight. This comment here that came, but Sansa at the beginning of Feast, that there's an abrupt shift in at the beginning of Feast, where Sansa does feel older, but also her relationship to Sweet Robin is utterly different than when we left her in A Storm of Swords. Sweet Robin hated Sansa at the end of A Storm of Swords, and then all of a sudden he's in love with her at the beginning of A Feast for Crows. Not that that can happen, but you'd expect that to happen over a little bit more time than just, a week or whatever. Now, when I bring up the Tommen's wedding probably being the thing that George was writing, and then realized that George specifically said he was trying to write that the main problems was, one, it seemed weird that Stannis was chilling at the Wall for 5 years, and that logistically didn't make any sense. But he was saying that there's no way that there would have been a stable King's Landing for 5 years with Cersei ruling. And he started saying actually there was several coups, and she'd been through 6 hands, and it was a really tumultuous time, but he kept writing about it in flashback, and he said it was just flashback after flashback after flashback. So he just kind of dumped it. But assuming that it is Tommen's wedding was the beginning, and then he was doing all of these flashbacks of Cersei's time as regent, it's interesting because Daenerys 9 is her wedding. She gets married to Hizdahr, and they have the opening of the pits. So you would be paralleling Tommen's wedding to Daenerys' wedding at the same time. And Tommen's wedding is getting compared to Joffrey's wedding. And Daenerys' wedding, the way you read Daenerys' wedding, and even in the final version of it, it's very much paralleled to Joffrey's wedding. When we think about poisoned locusts, or when Daenerys, I think Barristan at some point tells Daenerys to look away and not look at the fight with Drogon, because he's assuming that Drogon's going to die, and so it's about a mother not looking at her son. And in Joffrey's wedding, they're be brave, don't look at Joffrey, be brave, things like that. So it'd be interesting because now that's completely broken the way it is, because Daenerys' wedding happens so late now in Dance, you don't think about it in terms of Tommen's wedding, but they would have been happening at the same time originally, and so you would have connected Tommen's wedding and Daenerys' wedding. Daenerys 9 and how it's changed is so odd, because originally the locusts weren't actually even poisoned. That was put in later. They were eating the locusts, but no one got sick. And that was added later. But weirdly, the House of Paul even more suspiciously leaves. They're all leaving, and she actually comments what are they doing? Why is the House of Paul leaving? And I guess you're just supposed to assume that it's because they saw Drogon first or something. So, but it's odd that the House of Paul is more suspicious, but there's no poison, there's no honey locusts. So yeah, there's just kind of, these little interesting connections here and there that had things been different, you would have been ending A Storm of Swords with the purple wedding, and then beginning A Feast for Crows with a Dany wedding and a Tommen wedding right at the beginning, and they'd be all sort of connected. I also think it's very funny because in the original, but by the time we get to the Dany 9, we get poisoned locusts, which calls back poisoned pie or poisoned wine, and you get the jousting dwarfs, right? He puts the jousting dwarfs in Dany 9. So George is maintaining the connections to and parallels to Joffrey's wedding, even though he has now moved it much later. He's actually adding more parallels, because originally there were no jousting dwarfs, and originally there was no poisoned honey locusts. But originally it would have been next to Tommen's wedding, which is connected to Joffrey's wedding and things like that. But that's about it. There's contrast to Jon telling Bran to look away. Oh, to not look away. That's interesting. But that's about it. There's very few. I mean, in a larger conceptual sense, maybe you can say that 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 there's remnants of it, but there's not too many chapters that we can like go in and look at the text and really say, oh, this feels a little off. I think yeah, like the beginning of the Sansa story is a little off. Like, why are they trying to get rid of Littlefinger so quickly? He's only been there like a week, or 2 weeks, right? And yet everybody's panicking about how like Littlefinger won't leave. That's very different if like Littlefinger were lingering 5 years. Then everyone's like, fuck, we got to get him out of here. Versus like a couple weeks. So I think, if you're going to look for like remnants, you can maybe find something in Cersei 3, something in Dany 9, something in Jon 1, maybe something in Sansa 1. But there's not too many. There's not too many remnants of the 5-year gap because it was actually like abandoned so quickly. And certainly not Darkstar. Certainly not Darkstar. So let's see here. All right, starting after. Okay, so after you have Forte rant, are we saying agnostic wrong? Do words even have meanings if a judge can reinterpret that? Are you my real dad? Thoughts? Well, probably not your real dad. I imagine you're saying that because agnostic it comes from the of agnosticism, that we should be saying agnostic instead of agnostic. But yeah, pronunciation doesn't mean anything. You guys all watch Rob Words, right? Rob Words is like a fascinating YouTube channel with this like very he's this very charming nerdy British guy who does all of these like stories about where words come from, and that's the power constantly goes out here in Santo Domingo. But yeah, there's some interesting things with that. But yeah, I mean, we pronounce things ways for no reason at all. One of the most fascinating ones that he brought up was the difference between woman and women. That if you notice, like when we say woman, I go wo-men, and versus women, we-men. And apparently that construction of the wo and the we is incredibly old, and they changed the spelling of woman and women over time and the meaning, because like originally men just means person, and so like woman is like a female person, and there used to be one for the male person that got dropped, and stuff like that. But the we aspect is actually like, even though there's been a spelling change, or they wanted to make it consistent, so they put the wo to make it consistent, that society just never changed. And they're like, no, we're going to use the we for hundreds and hundreds of years, despite spelling changes, and things like that. So yeah, who's to say why we start pronouncing things differently and change and stuff like that? I know that like I'm like, oh, it's not my forte, but pronunciation is relative. You can say anything as you like, as long as your audience understands you. But this has changed things, and like, I don't use the word disinterested anymore because no one knows what it means. Like, disinterested means neutral. But if I said disinterested, people think I'm meaning uninterested. So now I just can't fucking use it because I know that no one knows what the word means. So I'm just like, I guess I'll just not use it. I can use something else. I can use the word neutral, so. But yeah, judges reinterpret them. I mean, the thing about judges is that the nice thing about judges, yes, a judge can just change their mind, but theoretically a good judge is basing something on precedent. And so that he's at least spending a lot of time thinking about something and having a good reason for it, and basing it off of a long chain of people who have been thinking about something and such. A bad judge just makes a decision without precedent, without willy-nilly, because they have some sort of like predisposed political belief about something. So I'm a big fan of precedent, but a Song of Ice and Fire style alternate name for the fanfic rather than the Winds of Winter. I mean, considering there won't be a regular Winds of Winter, like they'll be the only one. It'll be the only Winds of Winter, man. I mean, people will just know it as Sweet Robin's Winds of Winter or the fanfic Winds of Winter, but I couldn't. I'd have to think of something if it's important to have a different one. Winds of Winter, a Wind of Winter. I've told you my belief on that I think A Game of Thrones and A Feast for Crows are two really well named books, and I think that the rest of the books aren't that great. Like A Clash of Kings and A Storm of Swords, like I suppose A Clash of Kings is at least descriptive, but there's nothing poetic about it besides like the alliteration. Like A Game of Thrones, that's like thematically the entire story and the entire series, and and while A Clash of Kings is just, I mean, at least it's descriptive. It's fine. I think A Storm of Swords is the worst named one because, like, what is it? It's just, it could describe any book. If you called the first book A Storm of Swords, that would be fine. It is A Storm of Swords. And if you call the last book A Storm of Swords, that's fine too. There's nothing clever about it. A Feast for Crows is wonderfully poetic. A Dance with Dragons, it's not even descriptive because they're not really doing a Dance with Dragons in that book. So it's not a great one, not a great title. So you got two real winners, and then the rest are just whatever. How'd Jon betray Stannis if he resurrects in 5 years? I'm trying to get this, the age gap. Does Jon betray does Jon betray Stannis? I don't know if Jon betrays. I mean, there's weirdness with if you did the 5-year gap, like mentioning that like keeping Val single for 5 years is a hard thing. Like no one be marrying Val, she'd be hanging out for 5 years. I suppose you could have Jon have a nice relationship with her by then, because it's been 5 years of them hanging out. But I don't know when Jon betrays Stannis. I mean, besides like refusing his offer. Do you expect a tonal shift when Bran comes into his full power? All problems seem to be small in comparison to all-knowing time travel demigod. Well, George already kind of did a tonal shift. Bran 3, A Dance with Dragons, is in a completely different writing style from the previous Bran stories. It's much more adult. He uses much bigger words. It's more poetic. It's less simple. So I could see it just continuing in the Dance with Dragons like style. But, assuming that he becomes like all knowing and all this kind of stuff, I mean, he'd probably take like time with him, like dealing with his thoughts and like coming to terms with them, like in a more of a Reek fashion. You spend many chapters in Reek dealing with this now crazy character. You'd think that like Bran would be a crazy character with whatever powers or knowledge that he had gained from the tree and from time traveling Bran or whatever. So I guess there would have to be, but there is already a tonal shift with Bran, because Bran 3 is just a exceptionally different chapter from all the Bran chapters. And it's beautifully written, but it's very strange in that it doesn't it doesn't really feel like Bran in the same way. Um, because George was just I was I'm like going over a Game of Thrones series. I'm about to tackle Sansa 2. And Sansa 2 is just a brilliant chapter because he writes it very beautifully, but he writes it in a juvenile fashion. So like one of the things about writing is they always say like, oh, juvenile writers use too many adverbs and too many adjectives and like make things too flowery. And George totally does that with this Sansa chapter. I mean, it's beautifully written, but it's like it's so over the top that you'd be like, oh, that's such a juvenile way of writing. And so it makes it seem very makes it seem like a little girl. Um, so it's like, but I wouldn't even say that Brand 3 has that aspect to it. Like he's not overusing adverbs or anything like that. It's just a very dark, beautiful, like poetic chapter that doesn't feel like a little boy anymore. But yeah, there would have to be some sort of tonal shift of him going crazy or something like that. But I wouldn't perceive it like the show. Imagine all of a sudden it's like Bran chapters are like written by a robot. Like that would just be that'd be a weird shift. Um, would the story be finished now if George had stuck with the 5-year gap? I don't think so. Because the 5-year gap just doesn't work in many ways, and so I don't think it would have. I don't think it would have worked out, but I also don't think it would have been as great. I mean, I love the Ironborn and the Dornish stories and things like that. And if he had just shoved it all in a in a mega prologue and then forgotten about Arianne and Asha and all that stuff, like the book just doesn't end up any good, you know. Um, huh. Have you heard of Moonman's new theory? Essentially, he believes that a bunch of non-POV characters like Stannis and Mance are aware of the Aegon plot. I've heard it. Yeah, Moonman has asked me about whether I think Stannis would ever be an Aegon supporter, and I just don't buy it. So, so this recently Friday night, Trey, Carmine, and I watched Doorways. And one of the things that, like, while watching it, that we sort of pointed out is something that George does called that I kind of named um, inverse inverse exposition, where he establishes something incorrectly so that he can then subvert an expectation. So, in this story that of Doorways, one of the characters it says right from the get go, I have a good feeling. I know I'm a good judge of people's character, and I'm never wrong. And he's immediately fucking wrong and dies, like, or gets shot. I forget if he dies or not. So we have this like inverse expectation. So Stannis seems to be this. Everyone keeps saying, "Oh, Stannis is rigid and he cares about justice and he's wrapped up in these concepts." And it's like, no, like that's not Stannis at all. Like Stannis is completely flexible and he doesn't care about justice. He just wants to fucking be the king. He just wants to be ruler, and all these sorts of things. Like Stannis chose to follow his brother. His brother was a usurper. Like there was no reason that that if he's going by who's king in succession that it should be Robert. But he followed his brother because people follow brothers. And so the idea that he'd be following Aegon because or be interested in Aegon and give up his kingship for him, that just doesn't seem like Stannis either. Like Stannis is power hungry. He wants to be king. So, I don't buy it in any way. Now, George does a lot of weird retcons, but hmm, I mean, did he even have an idea of the Aegon plot from the beginning? When people make these theories about like Viserys shaving his head because he's trying to hide his Targaryen hair, and you're like, well, I'm not saying that George might not put that in later, but I don't think he planned it from the beginning because he probably didn't know. He didn't think about the Aegon plot from the beginning. Maybe fairly early he had an idea of maybe another um, uh, Targaryen, but a Blackfire, I don't know. And like the need for Varys to shave his head for it, I don't know. Um, but yeah, no way, no way I buy that. Mance would even be weirder. Like, why would Mance care? If you could sit on any band's album recording session, which would it be and why? Mine would be Beatles' "Strawberry Fields Forever." I mean, the Strawberry Fields is really interesting because they record the first half in one key and then speed it up, and then they record the second half in a different key and slow it down, and they kind of meet at the same place. I mean, obviously the Beatles are going to be the most fascinating, just because they're so iconic, and there's also just a lot of debate and fighting between them because you've got George, who always wanted to have more influence because he thought himself the genius, and then you've got like the John and Paul like working it out back and forth. I mean, it's going to be something Beatles where you're just where you're thinking about uh, that. Though I think Strawberry Fields Forever would be really interesting. I think though, because White Album might have a little more experimentation, even though I don't think White Album. I think the White Album is very overrated, but I think that there's so much variance on the White Album that it'd be fascinating to just like see what everyone's saying about every little thing. Like, what does Ringo think about Revolution Number 9? Like what how much were they laughing about the raccoon? I think that'd be probably pretty fascinating. Um, Was the 5 year gap announced by George after A Storm of Swords came out, or was it some rumor? Did he also announce he'd take the gap out explicitly? He did. You can read some of his interviews in the. He doesn't mention the 5 year gap in any interviews before 2001, but he when they're interviewing him about A Feast for Crows, he mentions that there's going to be a time skip in the early to mid um, 2001, and then he around October he starts saying, "No, I've trashed the idea," because people would hear about it and then they started asking him about it. The very it was a different time. He didn't have his blog. There was you know Elio was keeping these interviews and things like that, but it's a different internet back then, things like that. So this is not rumor. Like George specifically talks about them in interviews, the 5 year gap in 2001 interviews. So if you go to the So Spake Martin website on westeros.org and you go to the year 2001, you can go through and see what he's talking about. And it's interesting because it's very clear. Like you can read those interviews and people will ask him things like, will there be another point of view in the next book? Will there be a new point of view in the next book? And he'll say, oh, I don't know. I don't think so. And somebody will be like, it'd be a really good idea, Cersei. And then a few months later, he's like, yeah, there's going to be at least one new point of view. And I think it's going to be Cersei. And everybody's like, oh, okay. And then later he's like, there's going to be two new points of view, Cersei and another character. And we kind of all know it's Brienne that he's talking about. And then you're like, how did we get to so many? Well, he wasn't counting everybody in the mega prologue and stuff like that. But you kind of have to realize where the book is at various points and what he's saying. And but yeah, he's fairly open about his writing process early on and what he's going to do. And then him just saying, nah, this wasn't working. The 5 year gap wasn't working. Then, but later in retrospect, he says that he had the 5 year gap idea for a year, which means he would have had it. He said he was working on it for a year, but I don't, like what's working on it? Because he publishes Storm, and he's got to go on a book tour. How much is he working on things? You write one sentence and then you're working on it for months. I don't, because like I say, we don't have very much evidence that he was very far by the time he dumps it. Like I'm talking like maybe Jon 1, Jon 4, maybe Cersei 3, maybe Dany 9, maybe Dany 1, maybe Sansa 1. Like very, very few chapters. Certainly nothing complete, at this point. But yeah, he specifically did announce around. You can find it in October 2001. Oh, it must have been after Storm because nothing happens for like 500, 600 pages, then everything happens. Yeah, I mean, it might have just been a coincidence that he was at a good place with all the characters, and so he's like, "I'll do a 5 year gap." Um, all right, thank you from Kampala, Uganda on the stream. Uganda is so much fun. If you ever go to Uganda, have such a great time. Um, will Sam ever finish his chain in the story fanfic? So the unfortunate thing about Sam is that there's just not enough time for him to finish a link. I think he should have, I would have liked it for him to have finished at least one link. But the problem is that you're going to have a sack of Old Town soon. And he's going to be hiding out or maybe fleeing at this point eventually from Old Town to get out of there. So it's too bad that it doesn't seem like there'd be enough time for him to have finished one. I'm just trying to think like realistically. The Sphinx finishes 3 links in 1 year. So Sam could conceivably finish one, and let's say Sam is even smarter than the Sphinx, but that would be 3 to 4 months. But he's like wasting all his time on the glass candle, and things like that. Like, how much is he studying? So I don't know. I can't. I mean, we could say he like super researches like magic and wants to have a Valyrian link, but Marwyn's not there to judge him, so they would have some other maester stand in. And what would be? I mean, is there something that Sam is just like good at? Besides like hunting, Sam knows a lot about hunting, but I'm like trying to think something that Sam would be good at, like that he could get a link really fast. Let's see here. All right, here. What are the subjects that we got? We've got Ravenry. He probably knows enough to get Ravenry. Astronomy, history, money and accounting, money and accounts, Warcraft, healing. No, higher mysteries. Could we argue that? But then even Walgrave is too old, and then so it's Vinegar Valen, right? What do you? I don't know. Vinegar Valen, and then we established that Vinegar Valen got diarrhea. So I don't know. I'd have to come up with something. But he might be just at the border of how much time he'd been there, but it's just that he's been we established that he was really obsessed with the glass candle. What could he history? We could have him have a history link. Hmm. Maybe I'll have to think about that. There's just so little time. Oathkeeper equals Lightbringer. Jaime Brienne equals Nissa. Okay. So the Nissa story, right? People look into this Azor Ahai story a bit, and they try to like figure out what it actually like what it applies to, and it's very difficult to. It says here, I mean, so much time. It's a rather jarring like moment where Salladhor Saan like tells this long story. Oh, let me tell you about this Azor Ahai story. Oh, really? And then, it's like as if Davos, who by the way has been a fucking smuggler for fucking decades at this point, and has been going into the free cities all the fucking time. And we've already, they've now established that the religion of the Red God is pretty big in places like Volantis. And I'm supposed to believe that like Davos has never heard anything about like the legend of Azor Ahai. Like it's never come up. Like no one's ever explained it to him, and he needs Salladhor Saan to tell him like this late in life, I mean, it'd be like imagine if I did work in India, and I've been going to India for like 15 years, and then finally someone's like, let me tell you about Hinduism. I'd be like, really? I never fucking like looked it up until now. No one ever told me about Hinduism until now. For you to like tell the audience right here. But anyway, he went to temper his blade. Azor Ahai took 50 days and 50 nights to make a sword better than his first. Oh, I'm sorry. First, he labored 30 days and 30 nights at the sacred temple until it was done. However, when he went to temper it, the sword broke. Then Azor Ahai took 50 days, and to temper it this time, he captured a lion and shoved the sword into its heart. And then the steel shattered. And then the third time, he labored 100 days and 100 nights, and then he tempered it by stabbing Nissa. And her soul combined with the steel, creating Lightbringer. Okay. So, everyone's like, what does these things represent? Like the 30 days, the 50 days, the 100 days? Who's the lion that's getting the sword shoved into its heart? Can you make a connection to anything? Like what is Brienne shoving her sword into, and how is it breaking? Because Oathbreaker never breaks, and she never shoves her sword into a lion. Jaime's the lion. And say she does shove her sword into Jaime, like what did she shove her sword into before? Or why? What represents her break before that? And who would be her Nissa? I find the Azor Ahai prophecy like very difficult to apply to anything. People always mention these things like, okay, Jon stabbing Dany is somehow like Nissa because he's shoving his sword into the woman he loves or something at the end, and you're like, okay. What were the other ones? What was the lion? What was he shoved his, does Jon kill Tyrion beforehand, Is Longclaw a Lightbringer? I don't know. I find the like finding any connections to Azor Ahai just kind of impossible. Agree that Dany being nobody makes for a better story, but how do you explain Viserys? Rayleigh's miscarriage and Dany swapped in. Who would facilitate? So the idea is that Viserys has nothing to his name, and so he needs some sort of item to because he knows that he wants to form alliances and get armies, right? So if the idea is that if he grabs a random baby, and because Rayla actually miscarried or never, that he could that or at least the people around Viserys realized that if we had another Targaryen, he could at least have somebody to barter with, somebody to use to buy armies. You can marry my sister, that kind of thing. So it's like better than nothing is to have this like random girl. But the idea is like, yeah, that Dany's who would facilitate. I mean, there's the four loyal men and Willem Darry and the wet nurse. We have no idea where they are, but it would be a fairly simple thing to just go down and grab a kid, from the village. It wouldn't be very difficult. And you could say like, well, why would they do that? Why would they have such foresight? Everyone assumes that like that's what's going on with Aegon too, right? That it's not really Rhaegar's son, that they've swapped in some other random kid. And that he's a useful item in their war to have. He's a useful pawn. So I mean, I don't, that's the idea. That I mean, Viserys is probably too young to be doing all of this. It would probably be like Willem Darry and the Four Loyal Men that like come up with this idea of having another bargaining chip to play with, considering that Viserys is going to have nothing. But so if he has a sister, he can do alliances, And this was done with what, like, Jane Poole, all sorts of places in the story where we have a swap out. I think the purpose of Jon's death is to resurrect him both by Mel's fire magic and the wall's ice magic, thus making him a song of ice and fire. I mean, there's a million ways in which you can come up with Jon being ice and fire, right? This is this idea that Rhaegar is fire and Lyanna is ice. This idea that Jon is ice and Dany is fire. That fire is desire and ice is hate, and the song is about the wars that we have because of desire and hate. But the song, like, how there's a million places of like fire and ice in this whole thing. Like Jon had his hand burned at the beginning of the story, so that's some fire right there. And then he's shoved in an ice cell, so it's going to be ice there. The problem with fire and ice. It's like the Azor Ahai thing. It's so fucking general. It's so fucking general and broad that it can just be anything. It can just be anything. So what I know is that, like, obviously, like, Robert Frost's Fire and Ice is an influence on where A Song of Ice and Fire comes from. He first uses the phrase ice and fire together in the Armageddon Rag near the end of the story, when he starts talking about the music never dying and living on as a ghost. That Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix, they're all ice and fire, and their song will live on and on and on. Okay, this is like, and the way the show ended is actually the Armageddon Rag. Like, nothing beats a great story. That's the thing that beats death. That's the thing that continues on and on and on. So, I mean, the fact that the Song of Ice and Fire is already an Armageddon Rag, and that's how the show ends. That's kind of what the Song of Ice and Fire is that it's the it's the story. A song of ice and fire is the thing that beats death. It's the story. Nothing beats a great story. That's how you live forever. It's the arm. It's sad that it's that it's just the Armageddon rag, but I think it's just the Armageddon rag. Like you can read the end of the Armageddon rag, and that's what a song of ice and fire is. The thing he specifically the song that he specifically calls ice and fire at the end of the Armageddon rag is probably a song of ice and fire. It's the song that lives on and on in order to like defeat death, defeat the end of the world, which was fire and ice in Robert Frost's. But as like looking for like specific things in the story of that represent ice and that represent fire, I mean, you can find everything to represent fire and ice in the story. There's just so many things, you know. Is Jon ice and Dany fire? Is Lyanna ice and Rhaegar fire? Is you know, is the wall ice? I thought the wall, you know, he's the rose, right? He's the rose in the chink of in the wall. So how is a rose ice and fire? It doesn't. The exact calculus doesn't really fucking matter. It's the end of the Armageddon rag. Now I need to like, I should bring that up. Do I have a copy of it here? I'm trying to remember. Do I have the Armageddon rag here? Damn. I know I have it on one of my computers. I just don't know if that's limited preview. Limited preview. Let's see. Does this preview, like find a preview that goes all the way to the end? 200, well. Oh well. It's there. It's there, ice and fire. Wherever. Them living on and on. Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin and now Chris Christopherson. They're living on and on, the song of ice and fire. Nothing beats a good story. When you come into Australia for a book signing, oof, oof, oof. I mean, I've gone my entire life without making it to Australia. I've been to New Zealand. I've been to East Timor. I've been to Indonesia. I haven't yet made it to Australia. The reason being that I was always like, oh, I can probably do that later. Let's go to more difficult countries. But also, like, you need so much time dedicated to Australia because Australia is so big, you know. But yeah, love to get to Australia for a book signing. Let's see, where will I be before then? I'm here in the Dominican Republic. I'm supposed to go to Curacao in June. At some point, I'll be back in America, maybe around August. Maybe I can try to organize something in Washington, D.C. for book signing in Washington, D.C. But that would be nice. That'd be nice to I know a lot of people are very interested in book signings. Like they're like, some people are like, I only want a book if you sign it. I'm like, damn, how am I getting this fucking book? How am I getting this out to people? I'll try. Do you find it too ambitious to curate multiple coming of age stories within a larger narrative? Do I find it? Oh, with George, because he's got so many at once. I mean, all of his characters are really young for the most part, right? So the majority of his characters are children, and he is right because it's his young characters are. Whew, we've got Jon, Sansa, Arya, Bran, and then he's added Theon, Sam. I'm sorry, I missed Dany. Sorry, Jon, Bran, Sansa, Arya, Dany. So we got 5 children in the first, like starting in the first book, and then we add on Sam, who's a child, and then we add on how old's Asha? Asha's like 25. We can say that Asha is not coming of age. And then he starts adding adults, I suppose. Cersei's old, Jaime's old, Aeron's old, Victarion's old, Barristan's old. So, but yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard for him to do this, and I would say that, like, I mean, he's doing a pretty good job with I would say, his Sansa is probably his best, like focusing on coming of age, where he's actually thinking about like how children think, and and you know, progressing her as like an actual like girl that age. I would say his Sansa is the best written. Arya obviously acts way too old for her age. Jon acts way too old for his age. Bran acts way too old for his age. Sam is pretty good. And then Dany acts. I guess Dany acts like her. Dany acts her age, I suppose. I'll let Dany be her age. We start thinking of her as a silly 16-year-old girl. It changes the perspective of the story a bit. So Dany's pretty good, but he's done an okay job, a really good job with like Sansa and Sam and Dany with regards to like capturing how the young mind works. Theon, I think Theon's pretty good. I think he gets Theon's age really well. I think Theon too. So I'm gonna say, those ones are pretty good. The rest, he's kind of like ignored the fact that they're children or something, or passed over it. But it's pretty ambitious, very ambitious. I mean, the book series is massively ambitious, period. Love that you're a Whit Stillman fan. Metropolis, Barcelona, Last Days of Disco. Seen Damsels in Distress, spoofing his earlier works. Hilarious. Really? He has another one. I have not seen Damsels in Distress. Oh my. And it's got the guy from the OC in it. I'll have to see it. I'll have to check it out. I'm actually like, I really liked Barcelona at the time. And then I think I really liked, once I watched Last Days of Disco. The first time I watched Last Days of Disco, I didn't really like it that much. And then I watched it a second time and I was like, no, this is actually really fucking genius. But it does rely a bit on, Trey and I bring this up when we're talking about doorways, like the rest of the world, like your pop cultural window, thinking that the rest of the world knows it. And so he's like, his love of disco is really weird, and everybody going into these discos and being like, oh my gosh, this is so incredible. Like, it doesn't really connect so much, but I do really like I do really like that Last Days of Disco story too. Huh, this came out all the way back in 2011. All right. Well, I will have to check this out because I am a big fan. It's funny because it's like sometimes you get really into some art, pop culture, and then so much time passes that you never go back and like finish things up. You forget about it. I like there's little things like, so I was enormous fan of the video game series Ultima, like insane fan. I know everything about the series from Ultima all the way through Ultima 8. And then I never fucking finished Ultima 9. Like Ultima 9 took like 5 years to come out. I mean, it's funny, like compared to Ice and Fire, that's nothing. But it took like 5 years to come out, and then I just couldn't be bothered, and I never finished Ultima 9. And I was really fucking obsessed with Ultima. Or I was I loved the band Bad Religion, and then I just all of a sudden stopped buying their albums. And they have like 10 fucking more albums that they produced like after I stopped listening to them. And I was obsessed with Bad Religion, obsessed. And you just all of a sudden stop. And so it's funny because I really liked Whit Stillman, and I loved his first three movies, and the fact that like there's another one, this Damsels in Distress. Oh, and there's another one after that, The Cosmopolitans. Love and Friendship. He's been doing stuff all day. Yeah. Okay, I'll have to check it out. I'll have to check it out. Damsels in Distress. He's so fucking funny, man. Like there's this one scene from Last Days of Disco, which it's so like there's just the humor. You don't come across this type of humor because like the one of the women, she's about to go on this date, and her friend is like, in order to like excite the guy you're going on a date with, try to take whatever he's talking about and say like, there's something sexy about X, like if he's like, oh, I enjoy smoking cigars, you say, oh, I think there's something sexy to a cigar, and that'll like entice him and get him really excited. So she goes to his house and she's looking at his walls, and he's got an old like drawing still of an old like Scrooge McDuck, like comic book, like framed. And she's like, what's this? And he's like, oh, it's an old like Scrooge McDuck like comic book that it's like an original print or something. And she's like, oh, there's something sexy about Scrooge McDuck. And he's like, what? like that's just random humor that's just so different and hilarious, but it's like stuck with me forever. There's something sexy about Scrooge McDuck. Hi, Preston. I sent you an idea about the others that I couldn't compress in the super chat for the life of me, but I would love to hear your thoughts this stream or the future too, if that's not too long. Thanks. Okay, I'll take a look, Mackenzie. No worries. I imagine you sent this to either I've got my business email or I've got the fanfic email. I tend to actually check the fanfic email, but I think I definitely. Let me check here if I have it. Oh, here it is. You just sent it. Okay, thank you. I was reading an article about billionaire apocalypse bunkers in New Zealand and had a tinfoil idea about the others and uneven seasons that might reconcile them being pure evil versus more complex. If Ice and Fire takes place in an interregnum, and all the crypts and tunnels are in fact bunkers to survive nuclear winter, perhaps the humans and First Men are descended from the advanced society ruling class that caused the nuclear war to break out. The others are those left behind who collectivized and used genetic engineering to survive the nuclear winter. They represent egalitarian collectivized humanity, hence they're moving in unison and telepathic abilities. Interesting. But if the nuclear winter caused the long night, that doesn't account for the uneven seasons, the extended winter of a limited nuclear conflict are projected to end after 10 years or so. So maybe a total war scenario might account for the 100 years of a long night. Realistic though, a nuclear winter will eventually end. Planetos isn't cooling, it's warming after generations. The pact with the others involves the wall periodically cooling the planet, nuclear temperatures, so it can survive long enough to genetically alter themselves to survive a warming world. I think this idea solves a lot of the problems with the narrative. The others are an existential threat, but one caused by human greed. Jon could come back as a zealot to exterminate the others, but the others are more utopian collective society. Winter isn't coming, it's ending permanently. Would be curious to hear your thoughts. Interesting. So originally when I thought about the nuclear winter idea, because they talk about the long night lasting a generation. And so when you think about a generation, you think usually 30 years, something like that. Maybe you could think 20 years, but you think something in that realm. And so would a nuclear winter, like how long would a nuclear winter last? Yeah, they do usually talk about it. How long would a nuclear winter last? Oh yeah, it's only expected to last 10 to 15 years because it has to do with um, um, yeah, it has to do with like things getting covered up or half-lives and stuff. A generation is actually pretty long for a nuclear winter. Um, but then again, someone actually surviving for a fucking generation underground. So maybe they're just exaggerating over time the actual length. But yeah, I would be having the uneven season be a decade, or um, but then like why would it come back? Are the others planning on setting off another nuclear bomb, and bringing about another nuclear winter? I don't know. And like what's the uneven seasons like, and then what explains the uneven seasons? Um, in the fanfic, I have an idea for what causes the uneven seasons. It relates to the wall, but it's hard to say. George has many times just said, "No, it's magic. Don't think about it." Um, so who knows? But at the same time, George is so anal when it comes to his sci-fi. So I don't know. You got these two things. You have him saying that it's just magic, and then you have how he's treated every other fucking story in his life. So, um, could it be like I did think that yes, that different parts of humanity would have tackled surviving the long night differently. And so the idea is that the squishers, some genetically engineered themselves to go under the sea. Thus, they are their squishers. Some genetically engineered themselves to survive the cold on the surface. Some decided to go into holdfasts under the earth, that kind of thing. And so you can whatever those big pillars are at the end of Essos, that would be another group of people that are all independently choosing to survive the long night in a different fashion. But like, could it be some sort of like capitalistic versus communist like threat, like idea? Um, I guess that's not outside of the realm of what George R. Martin writes about. I mean, Sand Kings specifically is about like different types of societies competing and surviving, being represented by the different factions of the Sand Kings. Um, so perhaps it is just really weird that like the main characters would all be the capitalists and we're against the others communists in the end. Mm. But yeah, it could be something like. I mean, it's not outside of what George has written about. But yeah, I never thought it was strange because I hadn't thought about it in the sense that the others could have been a communist faction that um, that chose to collectivize telepathically and survived that way. I guess I never made that connection, but I suppose that could work. Um, but there is the question of why is there another long night coming, or is there another long night coming? I don't know. It seems like the action of the story is caused by um, is caused by people talk about the return of the others, but also people are like interfering with Craster, and they're interfering with the baby sacrifices and things like that. So, are they interfering with the peace agreement? Do we have any real solid evidence that another winter is coming? A long winter. Besides there being a long summer. Like, we have that, but do we have any evidence that a long winter is coming? I don't know. I don't think we could just say like no. Like, it turns out there's not a long winter coming. It's fine. Everything's fine. Hi Preston, going to Seoul for 4 days and wanted to tap your wisdom for anything specific to see or do. Also can't wait for the Davos chapter. So from what I hear about Seoul, and it's been a very, very long time since I've been to Seoul. Well, no, I went to Seoul recently actually, but I stayed at they have, I didn't see the city because like there's a hotel next to the airport. I was doing a layover called Paradise City. It's this fucking nuts hotel. It's and just enormous elaborate mall with dancers and play areas and shows and all these things for kids. Paradise City is where I stayed. I don't necessarily think you should stay there. It's really weird. But the last time I was in Seoul, I was there, but I didn't really see the city. When I was in Seoul as a young man, I went to see their palace. Like, they have a palace that you can see for a day, but I don't remember too many touristy things to do in Seoul. It was a business kind of city, and people for the most part went to work, and afterwards, they went out. And from what I remember, and people have told me that it's changed a bit. One, they say there's a lot more foreigners now in Seoul. But when I was there, I found it very difficult because Koreans at the time had a culture of you went out in big groups of friends, and you met different people through big groups of friends and connections. And you didn't just introduce yourself to someone, and you didn't just start talking to someone at a bar. There wasn't that openness to talking to a stranger like there is in Western society, or even in China. Like, it's just you go to a bar, you're going to be talking like they all, there's not the whole like sitting at a bar and talking to the person next to you. Like, people sit at tables and they like drink all night, and they grill, and they eat their squid or whatever in friend groups. And so it's very hard to break in and like meet Korean people. Now, also at the time, there was definitely bars that I tried to go into, and they're like, no foreigners, like no white people are allowed in this bar. And I was like, whoa, you guys are racists. Now, from what people have told me, that since then, the younger generation of Koreans have much more open mind, and there's been a dramatic shift in Korean culture. And so now Koreans tell me like that probably wouldn't happen anymore. Like, they believe that, like, okay, yes, that might have happened in the year 2001. We get it. Like, but, or the year 2000, but like we've changed a bit. We're much more international bit. We're not as xenophobic as we used to be. And then I mentioned the drunkenness. Koreans really get drunk. Like, they really get like dangerously drunk. And you will see, like, at the end of an evening, it doesn't matter if it's a Wednesday, it's people that need to go to the hospital like they need to go to the hospital to get their stomach pumped, and they're like people are they're everywhere, like puking right and left. It's a very heavy drinking society. So when going out in Seoul, like I highly recommend that you go out and see the mess, because people are just getting and drinking and fighting, and it's just horrible. But I will say that at least I remember that it was hard to break into groups because they're very friend group oriented. I remember a bit of racism, but Koreans assure me that the younger generation has changed, because I went to Seoul like 2 years ago, but like, again, I didn't see anything. But like before that, I haven't really seen Seoul in like over 20 years, 25 years, around 25 years. So I can't really comment on like what it's like to go out to a bar anymore, because it's a different world now. But I will say it was quite a show. I remember being quite shocked. I'd never really seen it, something like that. Except that maybe going to Pimlico in Baltimore, just the drunken mess of like Seoul at night was crazy. But during the day, it's a normal business kind of city where everyone's very polite. But yeah. So, but as for Davos chapter, it's coming along. I just got the submissions. Have to finish reading through them all. Asha is coming along well. It is nearly done. So we have finally can look forward to Asha, which is coming. And I think, Asha, I was originally not very happy with it, but I think it's now improved to the point where I'm like, okay, this is okay. This is okay. This is kind of the where I want it to be. Oh, hey, Preston. Oddest here. Did you ever get diagnosed on being on the spectrum? No. I mean, people have always said that, but I think like to some degree, everybody can kind of claim that. I'm pretty sure my brother is on the spectrum, and certainly, but probably on the spectrum. It's hard to say. Aren't we all on the spectrum? I don't know. Seems like George R. R. Martin is uncertain with Rickon and Davos. I don't know if really George thought it out too much. I think that when now that I've put a lot of time to thinking about Davos and coming up with like what Davos would be doing and rereading Davos, I've come to believe that Davos is a failed story of George and a Dance with Dragons. and I talked about this before when I had the stream on Davos, on does the Davos story make sense? But I think it's a bit of a failure, is in that George went in and he wrote 4 Davos chapters, and for the most part, they have nothing to do with the Davos story. They have nothing to do with his relationship with Stannis. They have nothing to do with Salador Sand. They have nothing to do with Melisandre. They have nothing to do with his children. They have nothing to do with the mother. They have nothing to do with Edric Storm. Okay, all of the things that have nothing to do with him surviving the Blackwater. Like all of the things in our story that came before with Davos vanish. And you can't find any other character like that. You can't find any other character where everything that happened before to them in the story is now irrelevant. Instead, it's him listening to Godric Burrell, listening to people at the bar, listening to Wyman Manderley. It's him listening to people talk about the story in other places. And it has nothing to do with Davos. And then the one plot that they gave him, that where it might be going, that chapter never arrives. We're 1/3 the way through the story, and then he's like, okay, we're gonna next see Davos on Skagos, and that chapter never happens. It's almost like, I would guess that George might have originally thought, hey, my next chapter is gonna be on Skagos and it'll be interesting, and then he couldn't fit. It was just, he realized it was too hard. It was too hard to write that chapter, and was just like, fuck it. I don't need to put anything more about Davos. That'll be the end. But what a completely, unfitting end to our smuggler, like, but zero progression on anything Davos related. It is 4 chapters of him listening to other people talk about other people's stories. It's him hearing about a little bit of the Sansa story, so the Theon story, and the Jon story from another another perspective, and then that's it. Like nothing related to any progression in the Davos story. So I see it as a big failure. And I think that, I think he completely uncertain. I think he just didn't know what to do. I don't think he knew what to do. And so he's just like, that writing that chapter is too hard. So I'm just not going to do it. Because we don't hear about him cutting it. We don't hear about him like Bran 4, which was supposedly a cut chapter from Dance. Like that was cut, but it exists. The Sans, the Elaine chapter that eventually was a sample chapter for the Winds of Winter. Like that one gets cut from Dance. Mercy gets cut from Dance. Forsaken gets cut from Dance. Like, we hear about these chapters existing and getting cut. We don't hear about him ever like writing a Davos chapter and having it cut. It should happen. That Davos chapter should happen, right? In the middle of Dance somewhere. And it just doesn't. So I kind of see it as just he had no fucking clue, so he just didn't do it. That's my guess. I know. It's like, I know people love Davos 4, but it's Davos. Like, I can't think of another character who just kind of fails. And I know everybody complains about the Dany story and the Jon story, like just spinning their wheels, but they do eventually get somewhere. Like we eventually have like an ending to their story. You can complain that the middle was too long and it was too meandering. Fine, I'll agree with that. But at least you got an ending. Davos, we never got an ending. We never got anywhere. Is Lyman Vickery alive? Will you explain it in the fanfic? I assume that Lyman Vickery is Lyman Vickery is interesting because like there is the characters in story make a mistake and say that he's died, but then he's not dead in the appendices. Like in the text, they say, "Oh, Lyman Vickery died," and then in the appendices, they list him as still being alive. It's really quite weird. Right, the Storm of Swords appendices is... It's almost like a mistake. Yeah, Lyman Vickery, a captive at Wayfarer's Rest. And yet, in Clash... In Clash, they say... Oh man, this is a toughie, actually. Rupert Brax is dead, along with Sir Lyman Vickery, Lord Craighall, and Lord Jast. 100 others have been taken captive. Huh. So now now I understand what you're. This is a tougher question. Because this boils down to what takes precedent, text versus appendix. because they're like, for instance, there's a lot of problems with like when we're figuring out like um, the Estermont uh, lineage, or like who rules um, um, House Swan and things like that, and the stuff in the text directly contradicts what's in the appendix. And then there's this question of like, well, what's right, the appendix or the text? So like, I mean, hmm, captive at Wayfarer rest. I mean, I guess the answer is like, is it interesting? You know, like, shouldn't Lyman Vickery have been given back when the Vances like bent the knee? Shouldn't they have released Lyman Vickery? And great. Nah, I mean, I guess he's gonna have to be. This is gonna have to be addressed in the fanfic where the fuck Lyman Vickery is. Hmm. Hmm. You'd think he would be, and then how, especially considering House Vickery, man, named after Dying of the Light. Who's here? And Lyman Vickery is the head of the house. You don't just like kill the guy off. Does he double? He doesn't. Does he double down on it? And oh man, he doubled down. He doubles down on it. He now puts Lyman Vickery as alive in the fucking a Feast for Crows appendix. So it's like he's doubled down on him being doubled down on him being alive. So is it just one appendix? Oh, he's alive in the fucking Dance with Dragons appendix too. So like, which wins out? Like text, someone's random phrase in a text, or like three appendices? I guess he's gonna be alive. We're gonna have to fucking bring him now. Now fucking Lyman Vickery is coming back, and he's gonna reference the fact that people thought he was dead. I'm not dead. How do you think I could be possibly dead? Oh man, these lost characters. Favorite movie, snack, and drink. I don't know if I have like. I don't like movie popcorn because I hate other people eating popcorn at movies. I don't think I have a movie snack or drink. It's not one of those things where I'm in the middle of a movie being like, oh man, I really wish I had food. I drink, you just have a Coke or something, but like man, um, do I need to snack during a movie? If it's a good movie, I'm so engaged that I'm not thinking about eating. I'm like watching the movie. If I'm sitting there worrying about Twizzlers and a fucking bucket of popcorn, like what am I doing? I guess some people like it because if their brain is active, their mouth, you know how like if you're trying to thread a needle, you might stick your tongue out of your mouth. Like there's this idea of, or chewing a pen when you're thinking, this idea that they need to have, um, uh, oral stimulation because they're thinking or something. But I don't know if the movie, I've never felt the need to snack. Who's got the best food in the world in your worldly travelers? Who's got the best food in your worldly travels? Um, Best food in the world is hands down Malaysia. Malaysia has the best cuisine in the world. It's kind of cheating though, because Malaysia has like, they've taken the best of Indian food, Malay food, Thai food, and Chinese food, and they're just like, this is our cuisine. We've taken the best of it all, and it's fucking great. And and while we're at it, like Hainanese stuff too. Like they do incredible Hainanese uh, cuisine. This is a thing I forget that like most people have never had Hainan food, which is like a particularly good like Chinese cuisine. All right. Da, 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 da. Okay, we gotta bring this up. But okay, so if we go to, I mean, the only other people that would like compare to Malaysia would be maybe Japan. I mean, Japan has incredible cuisine, but there's nothing, the variety and everything with Malaysia. So this little island here that's about half the size of Taiwan, this is Hainan Island, which is, and it's got a particular type of Chinese food that's often sweets. You know, they'll put pineapples in their fried rice, but also that's like they have a lot of spicy stuff, like you know, um, the Hainanese chicken and things like that. It's especially good, and a lot of Hainanese moved to Malaysia, and so there's some incredible Hainanese cuisine in Malaysia. But then Malaysia also gets all the Thai food, all the Indian food, all the Chinese food, all the Malay food. It's like they get the best of everything, and so you can't compare. I mean, you're talking about things like the best like curry puffs and the best like roti canai and just incredible like Singapore noodles, Hainanese chicken. Like it's just you can go on and on with like how good Malaysian food is. Rendang and stuff like that. It's just not to mention you're getting all the simple stuff from Indonesia too. You're eating bakso and you're getting all of the Chinese food and all the Thai food and stuff like that. It's just Malaysian food is like it's not even close, man. Malaysian food is the best food in the world. But yeah, what can you do? I'm sorry, everybody. Sorry that if you're into French food or something like that, but it's just there's nothing comes close to Malaysian food. Oh, in a previous stream, you mentioned mentioned a Storm of Swords Danny was different from the rest of Danny. How so? The only difference I spotted was no dreams / prophecies. Well, there's a few things. I mean, Danny in a Storm of Swords, like first of all, is just willing to immediately like go into having lesbian sex with her servants. She comes up with a plan to murder like all of the slave masters of Astapor and wants to kill anyone over the age of 12. Then she makes it to Yunkai and essentially pulls a red wedding plan on the second sons. Like she gives them a gift of wine, and like you're in a peaceful negotiation time, and while they're like enjoying their wine, she surprise attacks them while they're all drunk. And then she gets to Marine and she crucifies the great masters, while doing things like sending people through the sewers and things. Like she does a lot of like, there's a lot of brutality in a Storm of Swords Danny, where she's just doing things that are very, very bold, considering that like, okay, she's never had a lesbian encounter before. She doesn't have a lesbian encounter after. But one night she's just like, fuck it, Eerie. You're fucking, you're going down on me. And that's very different. That's weird. I mean, there is another character that pulls that. Her name is Cersei. That's just out of fucking left field. Declaring that anybody over the age of 12 can be like killed. I mean, 13-year-old boys, like, That's pretty brutal. Crucifying people, that's pretty brutal. That's it's pretty over the top. Like sneak attacking like people that you're negotiating with when while they're drunk and attacking them. That's all pretty nuts. And it's she doesn't do anything similar to that, and like before or after. The closest you can come is her agreeing that maybe Skahas should torture some people to get information on. He twists her arm a little, and she agrees that perhaps he can torture some people to get answers on who's in the Second Sons, or not the Second Sons, in the Sons of the Harpy. So that's a lot happening in one book. Actually, you could even go further and say, to begin, like rather than going back to Pentos, she directs Illyrio's ships into Slaver's Bay to get an army. Like, just really, really bold moves that she just doesn't do. Like, what boldness does she do in A Clash of Kings? She arrives in town and she lives with Zorro. She refuses his advances, and she tries to get a ship home. And then she gets requested to go to the House of the Undying. They try to steal her soul, and she has her little dragon like burn them in self-defense. There's nothing that she does that's really outrageous. In a Game of Thrones, like, she yells at her brother once. She wants them to like stop killing people in a village, and then she, I guess they kill the wine cellar they drag to his death, and she lets them kill Viserys. That's about it. And then she decides to burn herself and all of her possessions at the end. That's a little weird. Clash of Kings, she's pretty normal. She doesn't do anything unusual in Clash of Kings. She is the most boring in A Clash of Kings, I suppose, the most reasonable. But the Storm of Swords, like, it's just the number of things she does and the extreme, the how extreme they are off the charts. And so had she then gone with George's original plan, which was like leaving Meereen fairly soon and beginning her like Dothraki adventure, where we assume that she's going to do the show plot of killing all the Khals and all that. That's in line with her Storm of Swords personality. But because she lingers around and she spends most of a Dance with Dragons like visiting a refugee camp, having sex with Dario, negotiating with the Green Grace, negotiating with Hisdar, all very reasonable things. It's chapter after chapter of her being reasonable, which is kind of a regression from where she was in Storm. But there's also plenty of dreams and prophecies in both Storm and Dance. In Storm, she has a before her lesbian encounter, she envisions like a person with a shifting face, in her dreams, and then in Dance, she, has her dream about sex with someone with an ice penis and things like that. So, yeah, that's the big thing. Is she's off the rails in Storm. Ooh, top 3 best actors or worst actors on Game of Thrones. Jesus. All right, let's see. Let's see who the best actors are. Okay. Okay. My personal preferences on the best actors. This is like we could do a whole like S tier, A tier, B tier thing on this one. And it's not really fair because like age and experience is such a thing. But okay, let's be honest. I think the all right. Okay, I've got my three. I mean, they're all fucking good. I mean, do I think Sean Bean wasn't incredible? He was incredible. Do I think Jason Momoa wasn't incredible? He was incredible. Like they were all really fucking incredible. But if I'm really saying like who are the best of the best, okay, I'm gonna go with. I'll do a an overlay. I'll do my countdown. Mm-mm. All right. Third best, I'm going to say. Yeah. Okay. I'll give good reasons for all this. Okay. Third best, I'm going with Lena Headey. Okay. There is nobody that you give her. You can give her the best material, you can give her the worst material, and she is going to fucking act the hell out of it, and she is going to make that scene work. And she was given a lot of good material, and she was given a lot of bad material, but let's be honest, at the end of the day, there's nobody who can be just such a great utility actor than Lena Headey. Like she never did a bad job. There was never a scene where she didn't do it perfectly. And so that's number three. I think now, let's see here. Let's see if I can. Let's do another overlay. This is who I'm doing. My number two, my second best. Charles Dance. I did get this one. There is no character like the way he just played just the smarmy, arrogant asshole that Tywin Lannister was just like incredible. He was just a joy to watch every second he's on screen. You are just enraptured by him. If we're talking about faithful adaptation, he's too likable. He's far too likable, but he's so fucking good. He's so fucking good in everything he fucking did on screen. And my number one, and it's going to be, some people can probably guess it. It'll probably be a little controversial because I'm going to be a little controversial on my number one. But I'm talking the person that I think who made me feel the most and brought the most emotion in the whole series. I would say Alfie Allen. That's my number one. I think that like there's no actor who made me feel more than Alfie Allen. He like getting everything, like his entitlement, his like anger, his pain, his guilt. He had such a difficult role and such an incredible arc, up and down, all around. He's the character that brings tears to your eyes. And so I'm putting Alfie Allen at number one. Okay, so that's my number. That's my 1, 2, 3. Lena Headey, Charles Dance, Alfie Allen. That's my 1, 2, 3. Going the other way is hard. It's hard on who I think was like bad. Because it's not like I don't like some of these characters. Okay. Let's see. Who were bad? Some people improved too. Okay. All right, time to be mean. Time to be really fucking mean. And this is in Game of Thrones. Okay? In Game of Thrones. I think. Because what's funny is sometimes you see them in other things and you think they did you did a great job. But I would say number 3. These are going to be the fucking really controversial. Okay. Okay. Maisie Williams. I think that although she did a really good job in like her first couple seasons, somehow she just got worse with time, and I don't know how. I've never seen, like, because you can go inverse Sophie Turner. Like, Sophie Turner starts out not very great and then gets better in her acting ability over time. Maisie Williams somehow regresses as the series goes on. A lot has to do with, like, there are some actors who need good material and good direction in order to perform. Like, people talk about Hayden Christensen because you see Hayden Christensen in other movies other than the prequels, and you're like, Hayden Christensen's a really good actor. I don't understand. Well, if you're not given a good director and you're not given good material, like, some people can't act, you know? This is why I say, like, Lena Headey, like, it doesn't matter what you fucking give her. Lena Headey fucking, like, is able to make it work. Maisie Williams, like, she was really good in the first few seasons, and then she just kind of, you know, I don't know what she becomes. She just becomes this kind of, like, she has really bad material, so she plays things arrogant 1 second and broken the next second, and none of it flows and none of it's thematically consistent. None of it creates like a consistent actor or character. So I'm going to say Maisie Williams. I think number 2, these are all very controversial. Number 2, this again might not be his fault, but I'm going with Isaac Hempstead White. You're just sorry, Bran, but like, maybe it's not his fault. Because again, this is a guy who was like doing a really fucking good job in those early seasons, and then all of a sudden he's given bad material, and like, what are you fucking supposed to do with it? What are you fucking supposed to do? But it's just like he's on screen, and you're just like, okay, you're a fucking robot, and I don't know what I'm supposed to feel. So it's like, what's his fault? You know, is it his fault? And here's another one. And then my final one, and this is very controversial, but I think Emilia Clarke, which is insane because I've seen her in other movies and she's fucking great. She's great in other movies. Like, in other stuff, like, I don't understand what happened and how she became, like, in Game of Thrones, especially the later seasons, she's just so flat and dull and horrible. Because, like, I've seen her in other things and she's good in other things. I don't get it. But in Game of Thrones, this is my my controversial opinions. Very controversial. I'm sure let people fucking go crazy on that. How many links are necessary to form a complete maester chain? We don't know. It's never mentioned, but people kind of think that a reasonable amount might be like a dozen, you know, like if each link takes if each link like takes a year, like, is it reasonable to think that a maester would train for 12 years before like getting out to the field? Or if each link takes 6 months, is it reasonable to assume that like 6 years is a good amount of time for someone to be at the Citadel? The Sphinx does 3 in a year. So how much smarter is she than other maesters? Is she 100% smarter? Is she 50% smarter? Like that's pretty fat, you know. So you just kind of base it on that. Like if I think that like 2 links a year might be a reasonable amount, like for the average person. And so 6 years, you know, or um, but I think like you know, a dozen seems like a nice amount. But there is nothing in the text. There is nothing in the text that tells us how many links are in the chain. Um, haha, may have been covered, but Maris equals post Gap Brienne. Don't know if I buy it. No, that's just ridiculous. Like Pretty Maris um isn't invented as a character until well into what Pretty Maris appears in the Windblown chapter, which I think off the top of my head is written around the year 2008, 2009, like in the slow period of of George's writing. But you're talking um you're talking like I mean, A Feast for Crows is finished in 2005 and published in 2005, and Pretty Maris isn't invented as a character for 3 more years. That somehow, like, George had in his mind that there was going to be this Pretty Maris character and it was going to be Brienne, and there was a 5 year gap. No, like that doesn't work out at all. Like George, George abandons the 5 year gap in 2001, and Pretty Maris is not put to page until 2008, 2009. And he hasn't even come up with Quentin being a point of view yet at this point. He doesn't come up with Quentin being a point of view probably until 2006. Like he decides that he wants to make Quentin a point of view. So this idea that there would be a Pretty Maris would have been Brienne, and it all got shifted around from the 5 year gap. No. Like Brienne is one of the first characters that he decided he was going to put in A Feast for Crows. Um, Probably even before the 5 year gap was abandoned. So no, there's no. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. No. I've heard that before, strangely. George R. R. Martin uses terms from Irish folklore in his stories, wondering if you've looked at stories of the Fianna resting in stone and waking to the magic horn. I have not read much of Irish folklore, but I have heard that yeah, he'd been reading a lot of Irish stuff. Um, um, but so did Tolkien. Um, but he'd come upon it like a lot of his terms like hedge knight like come from Irish kind of stuff. So I know he was reading the Irish stuff. I think have I come across the Fianna thing? Um, that's from aren't they like the precursors to there's something in Irish folklore that's the precursors to like Tolkienian elves. Because everyone's like, oh, Tolkien invented elves. And you're like, well, not really, because there were other things that appeared in fairy tales and stuff that were like Tolkien elves. And so he didn't really invent them. But I'm trying to remember if it was the Fianna. The Fianna are warrior hunter bands, freeborn young men. No, I guess I'm thinking about something else. There's a word similar to this that I'm thinking about for like the pre-elves, but this wasn't it. I'm sorry. Um, but the resting stone, that's interesting with the waking, because I know like the circle forts that they find north of the wall are based on Irish history. I know that. Um, but I don't know anything about this Raising a pillar of stone. Resting in stone, being wakened from a... Yeah, I don't know anything about this waking. Magic horns with the Fianna. Where's this? Transition. Oh no. Though isn't it rather like lots of cultures, the idea of a horn waking things up? It's not pretty common kind of idea of these like horns. Why would the Golden Company, in fact, the Great Hunt, like the Wheel of Time thing, right? They also that brings back like heroes, right, from the dead and things like that. Why would Golden Company follow Aegon? Well, it's a bit of a mystery on, like, one is just that they had a contract. Is the if like some people say, okay, why would they? The only reason the Golden Company would follow Aegon is if he is a Blackfire. But what's very clear is that if there is a Blackfire conspiracy in the Golden Company, it's certainly not open. Everyone's not just sitting there talking about it, being like, yes, this is the true king from the line of, you know, Daemon Blackfire. Like, that's just not brought up. So at least when in terms of our sergeants, the sergeants seem to just go wherever the Golden Company wants to go, and they're willing to fight whatever they want to fight, and they really only care about getting paid. And then there's like Harry Strickland, like what's in his mind, like what does, you know, and we're not quite sure what's in his mind. You know, we know John Conn's opinion about Harry Strickland, but, you know, is he aware of a Blackfire conspiracy? Well, we don't know, but we do know that they broke their contract because they might have had a previous contract that they've been paid from Illyrio to follow Aegon. Now, why would they follow Aegon versus their commander, Harry Strickland? Like, why can Aegon suddenly take control of the company? I think it's the idea, well, if you're going to be fighting for this guy's cause, he's going to give you land. You're now going to be knights, you know, and that this is a big payday. Like, yes, we're following a contract, but now we're all being told that we're going to become lords if this guy becomes king. Well, now we're shifting, you know, the payday and the narrative around. So I think it's not unrealistic even if you remove the Blackfire conspiracy aspect to it, and if you're just Franklin Flowers, he'd be like, well, I don't know, I want my money, I want my payday, I want my lordship, and I want to kill a bunch of Fossaways, you know. A lot of them just want, that's a big payday. And so why would they follow Aegon? Because he's going to pay them. Yeah. So. Oh, what changes from the book do you predict for House of the Dragon Season 3? Carmine and I talked about this a bit, Carmine predicts that they're going to move the gullet to after the taking of King's Landing rather than before. Which, man, it's like I hope they don't, but I can understand why he's come to that conclusion about pacing. Because they've said there's going to be 4 major battles, and so you're talking about 4 episodes. And so in order to get 4, like they said there's going to be 4 major events. And so we're like counting them off, and we're like, okay, one of those has to be the taking of King's Landing. One of them has to be the gullet. One of them has to be something with the Riverlands army, whether it be Fish Feed or Butcher's Ball or a combination of them. So Fish Feed would be 3. And so then the last one has to be something like First Tumbleton, because you're dealing with, you want to be able to have, I mean, they could do the honey wine, but like you have to have one at least with each of the players. So we've got to have like the Riverlands army, which covers Jason Lannister, it covers the Starks, it covers, that kind of realm. And then we have to have something with Daeron because we need to introduce that character. And we've got Rhaenyra and King's Landing, and then we kind of like Jace and the Gullet. And you're covering a lot of the characters. Plus, in that final scene, the montage, we saw the armies. We saw that Thailand was going with the ships. Got to have the Gullet because we saw him. We saw the Hightower army marching out. So it seems like it'll be First Tumbleton. We saw the Lannisters and the Starks moving. So it seems like it's going to be Fish Feed. So, and we know that at some point King's Landing is being taken so at least we're having those 4. So I guess the big prediction was that Carmine made, that maybe I'm coming around to it, is that they're going to swap around and may have Gullet be after King's Landing, because they gave Rhaenyra a motivation for King's Landing already. Previously, Gullet needs to happen first because that's the motivation for King's Landing. But now you've given motivation for King's Landing first, so you can put Gullet whenever you want. So maybe that's it. That's the prediction there. I think Carmine and I predicted that they're going to keep Kristen Cole alive a bit longer because he's a fan favorite, and he kind of represents right now PTSD and what's wrong with the wars. I think we're going to see a lot more of Alice, and this time she's going to be getting inside Aemon's head. I think that we're going to see that. That's going to be fun. I mean, obviously, some various things from the book. I think, obviously Jace is going to die, but I could see the swapping because now we keep Jace alive until mid-season and make that the big shock. And then a lot of time given to Daeron. And then people think people have come up with the theory that they're keeping Otto alive so that, and not in King's Landing, so that he can do the poison routine with Second Tumbleton. I think I agree with that, rather than him just getting beheaded when Rhaenyra comes into King's Landing. So, so I think yeah. I mean, I think the changes are keeping Kristen Cole alive longer, having more time to learn who Daeron is keeping Otto alive, swapping around Gullet and the taking of King's Landing. And but otherwise, I don't know. I guess, we're probably going to see more of Helena and more of Alice, and that we're not in the book, things like that. So I would love for some of my theories to be correct about Luther Largent and Laurie Strong, but I'm not holding my breath on any of that. So. Hey, Preston, greetings from Slovakia. Regarding, love me some Bratislava, I don't know how you feel about DJ Crazy Town. You familiar with DJ Crazy Town? The with the but the regarding Euron, in true George R. R. Martin fashion, a built-up character is to be subverted. Uh I don't think you're wrong. Um, when we look at George's previous books, he does always kind of have a lame little subverted climax. Like in Dying of the Light, you're building up to this battle against all the villains, and then it turns out the villains kind of all killed each other. And so, and then in the last scene, we get a cliffhanger before the ending. And so you don't ever get to see like the big things you're building up the whole story for. Complete subversion. I think it works in Dying the Light, but I think the first time I read it, I was upset. And then the second time I was like, okay, I get this and it works, but I didn't like it the first time. Armageddon Rag as well. You're building up to this big thing and then there's a letdown. Like you're building up to this big like assassination. It doesn't happen. Fever Dream is building up to like, they tell you like, oh man, the Fever Dream, we've repaired it. We're going to go back onto the river and there's going to be this big battle. And then you find out the Fever Dream was not repaired at all. And it's just on land. And there's this very personal, weird showdown, which is great, but it is very anti-climax. So like Euron fighting Jaime, yeah, I could totally see George doing that kind of thing. But I don't think you're wrong. I don't think that like having the people finishing each other's stories at the end of a Game of Thrones, like Arya finishing Jon's story or Jaime finishing Asha and Theon's story, and it getting mixed up like that. That doesn't like even though it doesn't work. Don't get me wrong, it doesn't work, but it doesn't mean I don't think it was George's idea. I think it very well could be George's idea. That you're building up this big evil guy like Euron, just like building up Daemon Julian in fucking in Fever Dream, and then it's just like, oh, he was actually nobody. How many countries have you been to? I think my count is 115 around there, but I haven't, since COVID and children, I haven't Preston 6'7", smooth talker. I'm not quite 6'7". I'm 6'5" and 3/4. So like you can say I'm 6'6", you can say I'm 6'5", but I'm definitely not 6'7". I don't know about smooth talker. I think my personality got in the way of a lot of things. I recently read Armageddon Rag. I thought it was about Bloodraven opening the werewood net to create a hippie collective consciousness. You definitely like, there's so many moments in it because you read Armageddon Rag and there's so many elements that are similar to Ice and Fire as you go. So for those that haven't read it, and that's nearly all of you because no one's read the Armageddon Rag. The Armageddon Rag is about, the protagonist is a music journalist, and he's learning about this punk band that's getting reformed called the Nazgul. And they find the Nazgul used to have this albino singer who was incredible, and he died. So they found a new albino singer that looks exactly the same, who like kind of believes he's the same dude. And they're gonna reform the band. And then he starts getting these like dreams and visions that they're going to this big music festival, and it's gonna bring about the end of the world. And he's convinced that the end of the world is coming because this band is going to perform, and that he might need to kill them. He might need to kill them. And then he arrives thinking that they're going to be singing some like weird song that's going to like open up a portal of demons or something. And in the end, it doesn't. Instead, it's just like he looks on stage and he sees the ghosts of Janis Joplin and stuff. He decides not to kill anybody, and everything's fine in the end. It's just, it was nothing. The music was it. That was it. Like, it was just, so it's but you go through it and you're like, oh, it's an albino, and they're talking about prophecy, and it's like you're marching towards this prophecy, this end of the world prophecy with like this albino character, and these demonic visions and shit, and then you get to the end and it's none of that. Oh, congrats on the book, loving it. Now the question every author gets: how did you get past writer's block? Um, I don't think I had much writer's block on my book. It's not very long though, so I don't think I had much opportunity. I think that for me, it's just I was writing about a lot of experiences that I had or friends of mine had, and just kind of converting them into fiction. And so I kind of knew where everything was going um, for a while. I don't know if I've like I have much writer's block, you know, because I just think about an experience I had and then start writing it. Like you, like that's the thing is like once you start writing a personal experience, and then you can then the block is over, and you can start shifting the events and shifting people's reactions to it or whatever, shifting the characters around. But I think once you go into your own memory and you just pick an event that happened to you and you start writing it, and then you can change it and alter it, the writer's block's gone. I think writer's block is like, I think you're like trying to invent something and you don't know what to invent. Like, what am I going to write about? I don't know. Well, just pick a memory of a moment in your life and start writing about it. And that's it, you know? Um, oh, I'm shocked you didn't cancel to watch sports ball. Maryland in the Sweet 16. Well, you know, Maryland will always disappoint you, except for that one year. Um, I'm suggesting that the wall isn't a tech that causes the seasons to alternate evenly as part of a piece with humanity. Oh, that it's meant to do that. Well, that's interesting. Hmm. I just don't know if there's like a pattern that it's like by design that the wall is purposely creating uneven seasons. I don't know. Like, don't people want predictability usually in an agreement and a peace agreement? Mm. Only caught part of the Doorways chat. Did you touch on the similarities to Sliders, which came out 3 years later? Same show, basically. We talk. Sliders comes up. George is very bitter about Sliders. He thought Sliders was stealing his idea, but I will say that having watched Sliders, especially Sliders, and we talk about this a little bit, but having watched. By the way, our Doorways discussion, it'll probably be out this week. It's up now on Patreon. But Carmine, Trey, and I watched Doorways and talk for like 3.5 hours. It's like fucking nuts. It's way too much. But the door like Sliders, having watched the first season of Sliders, I will say that the first season of Sliders is so vastly superior to Doorways. Yes, the concept is the same. Like, you're hopping universes every episode. But like Sliders season 1 had like 4 of the most likable fucking protagonists like you could ever want in a show, where you're just like, I want to see them the next week. And it didn't. While Doorways is just a fucking wet blanket. It's just like it's shockingly bad. And George spent 2 years of his life on Doorways. 2 years of his life. There's just so many like major bumbling mistakes with it. And if you're saying like, okay, like a world where people are going to an alternate universe, like every episode, that's not that different than Quantum Leap or Voyagers. You guys remember Voyagers, where they go to history and a different point? Like, it's just you're taking the same concept, you're taking something serialized, but now it's just an alternate Earth. It's not that, like, as a concept, it's not that uh rich. I mean, isn't Twilight Zone or a different universe every week in a sense, right? Or isn't Star Trek that? Aren't they just going to different planets that are variants of Earth in some respect? Like, it's there's nothing innately like clever about the concept. So Sliders being the same concept is that's nothing. Sliders succeeded, like Sliders is infinitely better than Doorways. Oh my god, like so much better. Like, I'm trying to, like, oh my god, like, do you remember the original Sliders cast? Yeah, here it is. The original Sliders cast was so good. You know, you had John Rhys Davies, Jerry O'Connell. This woman, she was so, the sexual tension between them was great. And then the funny guy who eventually became the lead, right? I think it went so long that he like became the lead of the show. But it was such a good show in that first season. And then that first four characters, man, it was so good. And then I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it dropped off. I think they brought in Jerry O'Connell's brother or something. It was horrible. Should Indiana Jones dedicate his life to Christ? Uh trying to think about, like, the thing is before he has his like Jesus experience, he had the Hindu experience, right? Like, he already had like the Kali stones and everything. So he already knew that there's some sort of like the gods existed. And now he finds out there's like power in the Ark, and then power in the Grail, and um, eventually alternate universes and time travel, right? So I don't know how one reconciles that. I suppose he would have to think that like there's not a single god, that Christian sky god is a separate god from it, like exists alongside other gods in a pantheon, because he specifically sees the power of Kali, right? He's like, you betrayed Kali, you betrayed Kali, so that god must exist in the universe. So I don't know how he reconciles it all, like in his head. Like, how do you go on living, like knowing that you had this experience where there you had the Holy Grail and the Ark of the Covenant, and these stones from Kali and stuff. I don't know how one reconciles all that in his head. But it might be that he just like he didn't know how to deal with it all. He's just like, ah, fuck. Um, he's worrying about other stuff. He's worrying about his dead son and his divorce, shit like that. But dedicated. You'd be. I'm a bit surprised that he doesn't become super religious. Starts telling people like, no man, you gotta. Let me tell you, I specifically found the Holy Grail itself. So there was some power in Jesus' blood. I don't know what, but I think it must. The explanation is that what happened to him in India screwed up his ideas about like the Christian sky god. Is it possible that Leathers is a spy for Mance? I think it's always possible. I think a lot of people could be spies for Mance. But I think like the Leathers, I think everybody's suspicious of him. So I think the subversion is that Leathers is actually like completely legitimately loyal to Jon and wants to be on the Night's Watch, like legitimately, and that he's good the whole time. I don't know. George was in bed, writing. I need to figure out how to get Arya back to Westeros. Wait a minute, Lyman Vickery. I need to bring him back into all this. Falls back asleep. Yeah, it's true. Okay, let's try to get through this fast. George is crap at sex scenes. I guess, yeah. I mean, his sex scenes are what like he's got the very rough sex that Carl the Maid has with Asha. He's got the weird sex with like milk going into Sam's mouth between him and Gilly. He's got Jon being really good at oral sex and coming inside Egret. Um, okay, we're getting to my yeah, Dario 1 was pretty bad. Dario 2 is really good though. Yeah, we knew Alfie Allen. Ed Sheeran. Was Ed Sheeran that bad in there? Jack Gleason was really good. Let's the bad pussy. No, I mean I suppose of the Sand Snakes, I think Obara was pretty bad. The other Sand Snakes were fine as actors. Maisie Williams got worse when she realized she didn't have to try. Uh, yeah, I mean it's um yeah, she got this is mean. Stop. I've had their names up the whole stream now. So Diana Rigg was incredible. Diana Rigg was incredible. I mean, she took a nothing character with nothing lines and made it work. They gave Diana Rigg probably is the best example of like of spinning shit into gold. Craps on. Yeah, I mean, it's not surprising that the child actors are gonna be the worst. Come on. I saw Amelia Clark in her little Christmas movie, and it was fine. She did a great job. I mean, it was a really dumb movie, but she did fine. She was really good in it. She was actually even really good in that stupid Terminator movie she was in. She did great. Oh right, she had the two brain aneurysms. Yeah, fair enough. She was really sick. Peter Pascal did a really great job. You're right. He did. He did. Um, McQueen. Yeah, and that's the thing is I've seen Kit Harington be better in things. Um, um, thanks for all the content of yours. Thank you, Cal. Let's see if I can get close to the end here. Mm-mm. The horn wakes the sleepers in Morningwood. John Con's not in the loop. It does feel like John Con is not in the loop. It's kind of weird, right? Like he's like he should be running everything, and he feels like he's like the one person they're not informing anything. Um, I mean, John Kahn, I think he's emotionally, there's a reason he kind of failed at hand. There's a reason he failed at what he does. He is a really emotional, personal guy. He holds grudges. He lets emotion take him. Um, I think that's why we like him too. But he needs to separate out things and be a little more dispassionate in what he does. He thinks with it. He thinks with his emotions first. If I were Preston Jacobs to make a Preston Jacobs video on your book, when I finish it, what's your version of the Vietnam and getting cheated on by your best friend? If you could find any of that in that book, there's Dreams of Ghosts and Indians. There's lots of theories you can make on Dreams of Ghosts and Indians, but I don't know if you're going to get too much in there on my romantic life. Sometime, I can talk about it. No one's ever interviewed me on Ghosts and Indians, so I'd have to have somebody interview me to talk about it a bit. I'll remember the chapter when Sandy goes out with Lark and they hate each other, but have a drink for some reason and start fighting. What the fuck was that? This is from Armageddon Rag. It's look, Armageddon Rag. It's a fine book, but I'm not saying all of it makes sense. I think the characters. I don't know if any characters are likable in the Armageddon Rag. I don't like the protagonist in it. I don't like any of the characters around him. I think it's very clear why the book failed. I think it's finely written, but it's just like the premise is so off that you're kind of like George, like, writing it, thinks that the rest of the world listened to his music. And if anybody knows, everybody had their own music. And so when you hear other people talk about their music as if like a whole generation was listening to what George listened to, like, he might love Peter, Paul and Mary, but I don't know if the entire world was listening to Peter, Paul and Mary. He might love Chris Christopherson. I'm not sure if the entire world was listening to Chris Christopherson. They were popular and all, but imagine if I wrote a book about Stone Temple Pilots or something. And I was just like, man, and when Stone Temple Pilots like spoke to us as a generation, you'd be like, they were fine. Oh man, fucking Stone Temple Pilots. There was that moment, and we were like, it's like I was alive. I remember when like Kurt Cobain died, but it also wasn't like this huge emotional, like, generational connection moment. Like it's just certain things, or at least not from my perspective, So like George's perspective on music, it was his perspective, and it's not a universal. He was trying to write a book that was universal, and it wasn't. It was very specific. And it's so weird because he's like writing about punk rock, but he's writing about hippie protest music, and then he's also writing about Lord of the Rings, and in a fantasy sense. And so it's very, very specific genre. I mean, it's fascinating because you learn a lot about George and his life and who he is, but I can understand why it bombed, like it's also like taking you could also take like my book is very specific. I don't expect a large audience of people to be like, oh yeah, no, that's what I want to read about. I want to read about someone like people traveling from Morocco to Japan, like mostly through the Middle East. Like most people are like, no, it's not going to be up their alley, which is fine. But yes, Sliders was. I mean, no one thinks Doorways was. I've never met anyone that thought Doorways was good. Come on. To do with seasons, reasons it all is, it's all one hemisphere. Well, we don't know. Like, it seems like according to um it seems like, we think of it as the northern hemisphere because, it gets colder as you go north. But um we don't know like how wrapped around, like, are the Thousand Islands actually really close to the frozen shore on the other side? Like, how far north are we to the pole? Um, but then Sotheros seems to go south forever, and so, and we don't ever hear about Sotheros like becoming cold again. So it may be that there's only there's only one cold pole. So I don't know, on the planet. I mean, different people have come up with different like rotation theories on it. George specifically said that the rotation theories were wrong, but somebody did make the thing work with. I think, in a three body problem situation, you could get a planet that doesn't have uneven seasons pretty easily. Indiana Jones is an anti-vaxxer? What? How is that true? Um, Rose Leslie was pretty good. Rose Leslie was excellent. Rose Leslie was fantastic. Who are the sexiest got actors? I mean, Rose Leslie, the Marjorie, Missandei, what else we got? I mean, Tyene. Um, hmm. Oh, still, are you my real dad? Probably not. Probably not your real dad. I'm just saying, like, look, I don't know how old you are, Sour Billy. But you know, or I don't know who your mom is. Like, maybe your mom went to college with me. Maybe I met your mom, in life. I don't know. I'm not saying, like, there's a possibility, depending on your age, that I could be your dad. But if you are, if you're younger than, let's see, I'm going to say that, like, if you are younger than 27, there's a possibility I could be your dad. Um, Preston picking the actresses with a little spice, respect. Oh, I mean, come on. The let's see here. It is true that Missandei is Missandei the hottest one? I mean, this is like the smash or pass. Like, Glytis did a smash or pass thing, right? But I mean, how, like, you know, like, this is your Missandei character. She's like, you got her all in like a collar and everything. I mean, somebody got this signed and everything. Yeah, I mean, Sunday's got it going on. Um, the the Daria. The Daria actress. I mean, I think I probably would have preferred the Eerie. I think the Eerie actress is more. I mean, Daria is obviously pretty hot, but oh, you know what? Fuck. You know who? I fucking loved was here's Dariah. Though Eerie and I mean Eerie and Jeekwe are both hot, but Eerie is pretty hot. Right. We got Eerie, but who is it? Who's the Ramsay's girlfriend? Ramsay's girlfriend is insane. She had like some character though. She had like the badass. She had like the you feel like she would make fun of you. She would like make fun of you in bed or something. Oh, that's right. He actually uses one of them in the seducing Theon. Miranda. I was about to say what's funny as I was about to be like Samantha, right? It's Samantha, right? And they're like, oh, it's Miranda. Oh, right, you know. This is where I was like, Carmine, you're gonna call in for the lowest. Carmine, call in for just a second because I want to ask you about the top actors and the hot ones. This is the easy discussions. This one you can clip for your channel, dude. Or he's supposed to be like, what about the Liana Mormont? I'm just gonna pick like the ones no one would pick. Why don't most fantasy series have two ice poles? It's true that they never seem to go that way, and they never seem to go like southern hemisphere, right? It's never like they're heading south and it's getting colder. Are there any where it's the south? Are there any southern hemisphere fantasy stories? A Broken Earth trilogy? Hello, there we are.
What's up? What's
I
going on?
mean, the yeah, why aren't there penguins are we are is Missandei the S tier of it all, or are you putting like you like Marjorie and Rose Leslie, right? You like
Huh?
you like Marjorie and Rose Leslie, don't you? Wait, you're more of a blonde guy.
No, they're up there. Yeah.
You're
I
the
mean,
Latino. You love the blondes, so you like Amelia
th-
Clark.
this is where we separate the men from the boys. Fake Sansa. Wait, are we saying like the hottest face or nicest body?
It's a whole package. You're going
Hmm.
nicest face, greatest body, whatever. Like whatever. Like for instance, I can understand like someone else might not think that Miranda has the most objectively beautiful face, but like there's something about Miranda that just like causes me to go crazy. Um, so I think it's sort of I think it's the same. There's people that have like classic boring look, and then there's people that have something like interesting about them. Um, uh, you know, kind of aspect too. So you know, like I think Natalie Dormer has an interesting look to her. Um, right? Because she always had like that crooked smile and that smirk at all times.
So Natalie Dormer has like she's definitely from the UK. God, I hope she's from the
Sure.
UK. Like British women kind of look. They don't. I'm not saying British women look bad, but they have a certain look to them. Like, yeah, she's British. I could tell, and she's pretty British. You know what I'm talking about? Like, she's very good looking, like British
You're
wise.
saying
But
for a Brit, you're saying.
well, I'm not. I think British women are English women are attractive, but they have a specific look to them. But however, I think we can all agree, and even the
Like she always
Brits
had this
agree,
like
and I'm sure
smirk,
you
you know.
agree that there's like you can't touch like Spanish and Norwegian. You know what I'm saying? Like Spain
Sure,
women. Oh
sure. I
my
mean, I
god,
think probably what the Taina actress,
she's Italian.
yeah, but she's a very like if you were talking about like you went into a fashion magazine and they were being brutal, okay, and they would probably they'd look at Taina and they'd be like, well, she has she has perfect features. There's like, but they're also very like neutral, boring features. Um, like she doesn't have any.
Also, I don't even know why. Like this is a weird conversation with
This
you
is a
because
weird
I know you don't only
conversation. Yeah.
well, with you because I know you don't like white girls. So
What girls are fine. There's usually has to be something interesting going on, for me. There's usually like,
you
um,
know who's actually very pretty is Emma Darcy. Even though in the books she's supposed to be like chubby and kind of not good looking, but Emma Darcy's Rhaenyra is like model hot.
oh yeah, definitely.
Hmm.
I mean, I think people look at Emma Darcy and what they like. I'll put up a like a quick one of Emma Darcy. Like with Emma Darcy, she's got like this like chiseled kind of jaw kind of aspect to her that gives her a really
See, that's not the best Emma
striking.
Darcy Rhaenyra. Yeah, there's a phenomenal Emma Darcy Rhaenyra picture where they have this face where it's just such a cute face. I'll try to find it for you. You can put it up, but I see what you mean.
Yeah,
By
but
the way, what you said about Matt Smith when he first got cast as Damon, oh my god, that was the most hilarious thing ever. Because you were like, this guy looks like he doesn't look like I would picture Damon. On the contrary, he looks like a guy that would be the product of incest. Someone said that in the comment section that we brought it up, and you're like, yeah, a little bit.
so I mean, it's a this is getting to be a really really weird conversation. But I think like the um Americans make it's funny because like we America in many ways thinks of itself as being a child of England, like historically, and obviously we speak English and we think of our culture being an offshoot of England. However, like ethnically speaking, the most dominant ethnicity in America is German, and so we have a more Germanic look to us than, and so like when I'm walking around Germany, people can't tell I'm American, and so and people would ask me directions in German all the time. Well, I feel like walking around different countries, they know I'm not from there. Like like if I was walking around France or Spain, they know I'm not French. They know I'm not Spanish. They know I'm not Italian, or they're pretty sure. But in Germany, they all knew I was. They all knew. They all thought. I'm sorry. In Germany, they all thought I was German. But there is that like small difference. We make these jokes about like British people they always seem to have ears that stick out or something, or the old men have a red nose, or a bulbous red nose or something. Why is that? It's just random little background. But Americans, at least white Americans, obviously look more German than anything else on average.
Americans love being anything but American, unless it's 4th of July or there's a war going on or an election.
Oh, whoa, Preston, Emma's a they them for real. Okay, I'm sorry. The again, it's like we're raised with pronouns your whole life, and it's hard to it's hard to switch. But yes, I don't mean to be dead naming anybody or anything like that. I respect Emma Darcy tremendously, and she can identify however she would like, and I
They can identify
Fine.
however they would like.
They can identify however they like,
Yeah.
and I am
Well,
fine with that.
I'm not trying to get on Mr. A's case, but I
Yeah.
think Mr. A, who I've seen in the comments often, knows you well enough to know. He's being
Sure, I mean he's
polite.
teasing me, but like,
Right, right. He's being polite, but what bothers me sometimes is like how some fans, very few, can get on your case or that. Obviously, you're not Matt Walsh, you're not Ben Shapiro, so come on.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That's not directed at you, Mr. A.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The English are Germanic. I mean, so the problem is that the word Germanic doesn't mean German. So like where most of the English come from, I mean, the Angles and the Saxons, yeah, there's parts in northern Germany, but that's mostly like Denmark. You know, so it's like, yeah, it's German, Germanic. It's yeah, but you know, keep in mind, England was the melting pot before America was the melting pot. Everybody invaded England over and over again, so they get it. They get so much stuff from everywhere. So, um, but yeah, there's this these weird technicalities of what is Germanic versus German. Um, yeah. We know you're an LGBT icon. I don't know how many people have been putting a Preston Jacobs in at their uh, pride parades. Preston Jacobs, ally. you know, you know. So, um, oh, I like other ethnicities, but I'm so tall. That's the tall girls. Yeah, this is a toughie. So certainly being a guy that was 6'6", like it was like if tall girls were always somebody I knew that I could like always talk to, and they're kind of the putty in your hands kind of situation. Because if you're like 6 feet tall, you've got like four options in the world, and women tend to want women that guys that are taller than them, or as they say, somebody that I can dance with in heels is what tends to be the situation. They want somebody that's taller than them in heels. So, I know, Carmine, you're only like 3'4", right?
Thank you,
So,
thank you. Yes, I'm one of the goblins and Gringotts. Yes, thank you.
but you know what Danny DeVito would say in interviews? So Danny DeVito is really hilarious in interviews because he's really honest. He's really
And
honest.
rich. He's
Yeah, he's
really
super
hilarious
rich.
and rich.
Yeah, no, he's great, and he's a really good person too. I love me some Danny DeVito. But one of the things he said was, because he's 5 feet tall, and he said that, um, and they're like, "Were you ever insecure about like your height?" And he's like, honestly, like I didn't think about it too much, except with women. But then again, almost all we do is for women, and like so he's like, I really got into like entertainment and theater because of women, trying to be around them, and and he's just like, that's why I pursued it. And he's like sometimes, yeah, were you limited though because you're short? And he's like, yeah, but sometimes I would just pick the most insecure tall girl and ask her to the dance because they had no one to go with. And so I was just like, yeah. And so like he'd like pick the tallest girl in school because no one was asking her out. And then he would go to the dance with like this incredibly tall girl. So Danny DeVito has a lot of riz. He is funny. He is good. Um, I'm 6'5". I've only met a girl taller than me once at a bar. Um, I can't stress enough how much Severance is your show. It literally all about identity and class consciousness. Take my money and buy the next box set. Oh, I'll get it. I'll get it. I've just today I was like, oh, I should be watching Severance and finish season 2 because it was really good. It was really good.
Even I'm on Severance, man.
Yeah,
I've
I
seen it.
know. I know. I
I'm
know.
waiting for season 2 just finished, so I'll start binging it soon.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'll be there. Um, Yeah. So, Carmine, what else you got going on in life, man? You doing okay?
Stuff. Yeah. It's Ryan. Not to beat the Severance thing too much, but Ryan is correct. Severance is definitely up your alley. That is your show. Apple TV just does not fucking miss. It real
With
Silo
their
Severance.
one show a year, yeah, it's of course.
No, they're putting out more stuff, man. They really are.
Because
They're
they
really
had
putting out
they
more
had
stuff.
is Apple TV also the Jason Sudeikis show.
I
Um,
don't know his name off the top of my head,
the
but
soccer one, the British soccer one.
Ted Lasso.
Ted Lasso. Is that?
Is that on there? I thought it was on Showtime. No, it's on Apple Plus. Yeah. Yep. It's on there. They just don't miss. They really don't. Remember when we had Phil on and we were talking about best TVs of the
Yeah,
year?
yeah. He loved
A
it.
lot of his were on Apple Plus. I really think you should give it a shot. I think you
Ooh,
should give
they
Foundation a
leave it a
shot.
billion a year. I imagine all of them are. But Severance is just people walking down hallways, but it's fascinating walking down hallways.
It's kind of true.
It's I told you my first experience with it, where I was just like I was watching your little kids show, the Star Wars kids show, and I was like, this is so boring. And I turned on Severance, and I'm like, oh my god, Adam Scott walking down a hall. This is
Wait.
fucking incredible. Oh
Which
my god.
Star Wars? Fuck. What's the name of it? Oh my god. What's the name of it? Skeleton Crew.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You didn't like Skeleton Crew? You're out your mind, bro. You're out your
Yeah,
mind.
yeah. I never finished it. I know you said it got better. It was good, but yeah.
No, Jack here is correct. Home of the expensive sci-fi. Yes. Anna is also correct. Severance. Blah blah blah. I just saw it. No, I'm sorry, not those two people. RXNV, Silo, Ted Lasso, For All Mankind, Severance. Yeah, he'd like all those shows. I know that for a fact. I'm watching For All Mankind.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh wait. Let me give you and the audience. I actually fuck. I can't spoil For All Mankind because the way the first episode ends, has such an amazing twist that it'll make you want to come back. Watch the
Okay.
first episode of For All Mankind. Just don't look up anything about it. Just
What
I'm a hold on. For All Mankind. Let me make sure the poster doesn't have a. No, poster's okay.
okay. So it's
Watch the first episode
space.
For All Mankind. The first episode, the ending. Oh,
Okay. All right.
that's up
All
your
right.
alley.
Okay, because I mean, like early Expanse, I really liked because of the realism of the space exploration and stuff like that. So, what's this House the novel coming along? It's published, man. It's published. The novel is published. It's finally coming around. Did you agree, Carmine, with my list of the best and worst actors in Game of Thrones?
Who's the worst? Amelia Clark,
Yeah,
Maisie Williams.
yeah. That's
Um, I wouldn't say Amelia Clark was bad.
I just thought the later
She,
seasons of her was just so boring.
that's fair. Isaac Hems, I didn't think he was bad. I thought Maisie Williams in the first few seasons were great.
Oh, I
First
think they
season
were
one,
all
she's
great in the
amazing.
first few seasons, and then
Huh?
I
That's
just
an
think they were
interesting
given bad
question.
material later and didn't know what to do with it. So, but
You're
yeah,
gonna talk about worst actors and not include the first Dario?
I guess so. The first Dario is bad, as is Obara. I'm trying to think of some other really bad ones that stick out. I don't think their Zaro is very good. I don't think the Zaro. I didn't think he captured Zaro at all, and there was nothing interesting about him.
No, Liana Mormont.
Yes, I guess she's a little kid. I guess you're right. She's just
Lady
whatever.
Sandra Bolton.
Lady Sanders
Really?
Bolton. I'm trying to think of anybody else that's really bad. Do you think
Euron.
he was fine
More
for what he did? He
more
was fine.
cringe than bad.
More cringe than bad.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah. hmm Oh well. Oh well. I'm not saying Maisie Williams can't be great in other things. People see, but and in those first seasons, I think she's great. But just give him bad material. Give him bad material. Shay's actress was not great. You're right. She was not. I mean, I think Shay. I mean, she was originally an adult film star. Um, Giles Rosby. Wow, man. What there was a horse that got an erection in one of the scenes. Do you remember this, Carbon?
Um, Not the Hound, but in the original pilot where Emilia Clarke wasn't Daenerys, yes,
Mm,
there was a sex scene. There's a sexy time scene between Daenerys and Khal Drogo, and there's the horse. They tried doing the horse jumping over the fire thing,
mm.
but the horse they removed that for the pilot we got because in the original pilot, the horse watching Daenerys and Khal Drogo got an erection.
Good times. Good times. Well, that's what horses do. Horses do that all the time.
I guess.
Huh, she's a better actress in German. That's probably true. Most people are. That's the thing, is like when it's bad writing. Oh man, oh man. All right, so yeah, so it's about midnight for me. Oh, got one more before to bed. Fine, fine, fine. Unpopular opinion, but Ian Rian, Ramsay Bolton, was terrible. One note Joker ripoff with zero range. Very weak actor. Um, I have never. I mean, I never watched uh, the Marvel thing they had. You know what I'm talking? The what is it? The
The
not
in the
Immortals, but
Inhumans.
Inhumans. Yeah, I know.
Mhm.
Yeah, I never watched the Inhumans, but um,
Good looking
the,
guy.
yeah, yeah, sure, yeah, sure. But yeah, the question is like, can he do anything other than that? I don't know. I've never seen him in anything else. Maybe there's a reason we haven't seen him in anything else besides Inhumans.
He's in British TV. I'm pretty sure he was in Skins.
Okay. It says those about to die, Misfits, Riviera. All these shows I've never seen.
Yeah, you're not gonna see him in anything. He was in American Gods. He was in pretty sure he was in Skins. He was in Misfits. Like you're not gonna see him in anything.
All right. All right. Well, yeah. Huh. Huh. Oh, I can kind of believe that he might be one note. Very different than say like the actor for Joffrey, where you like see him in interviews and everything, and you're like, oh my god, he's completely different. He's incredible.
Most most of the Game of Thrones main actors have kind of fallen off. Like Amelia Clark will show up every now and then, but what has she done of like major importance? Nothing really. Kid Harrington, what has he done? He's kind of gotten a couple things here and there, but it never really panned out. He was Dane in the Eternals, and what's going on with that? Who the fuck knows? What is Maisie Williams doing? Who cares? Bran, who cares? Lena Headey, is she doing anything? Who cares? Jamie, who cares?
Was Alfie Allen? Was he in? Wasn't he in a few gangster movies here and there?
He was the son in John Wick 1. I think he did something else recently, but again, who cares? Charles Dance shows up every now and then, and Peter Dinklage, yeah, but that's about it. Everybody else, who
Okay,
the fuck
first of all,
cares?
Natalie Emmanuel Missandei.
It,
She was in the Fast and the Furious franchise.
yeah, but let's be fucking real. Like,
Jason Momoa is in fucking everything. He's all over.
right, but I was talking about our main characters, like
Oh, okay, okay.
Tyrion, Cersei,
Main
Jamie.
characters. Sophie Turner got married and divorced to a Jonas brother. Gwendolyn Christie. I guess she was in Star Wars, but he hasn't done much.
She was also in Sandman, and she appears every now and then and stuff.
John Bradley had got to be in. John Bradley's actually been in a few things, but he most recently through Body Problem. But the Dink was in an X-Men movie, right, and stuff.
Oh, you know who's really blown the fuck up recently? Out of nowhere,
Hmm.
season 2 major character for Theon, Dagmere, the guy who played Dagmere Cleftjaw. I'm trying to find his
What?
name right now. Yeah, his name is Ralph Ineson, and dude, his voice is, by the way, phenomenal. It's one of the best voices I love hearing him. He's gonna play the voice of Galactus in the new Fantastic
Oh,
Four.
really?
Yeah, he was in the oh, fuck. What's the evil kid? What's the evil kid? Damien. For fuck The Omen. He was in the remake of The
Yeah,
Omen. He's
yeah.
been in a bunch of stuff.
For the worst adapted character from the show is the Dagger Cleftjaw.
Clever, clever try, dude. He was in The Witch, which I with Kate Dickie, who is Lysa
Yeah, Kate
Arryn.
Dickie's and everything. Yeah, got it. We love the Dickie. Can't get enough of the Dickie.
That poor woman at that last name. Poor woman. She embraces it though.
She's done great for herself. She has all of our love.
Yeah, I guess.
We gotta remember, it might be pronounced differently in Scotland.
Decade. Kite decade.
Decade.
I can't do it.
Right, and um she apparently gets all of these Scottish um acting awards.
Right, and like I said, like the main Game of Thrones characters and the actors who portrayed them, they're not really doing much. So we'll see. We'll see
Oh,
if Emma
right.
Darcy and Olivia
She
Cook
was
get
in
anything.
Loki. She was in Loki. Yeah.
Right, but she's not the star.
Is Sean Bean even the star? When was the last Sean Bean was the star?
Sean Bean has fuck you money. He don't have to do nothing. And he
He
had his own show.
doesn't have that much fuck you money.
He had his own show on TNT where he was like the star. That's about
Oh,
it.
did he?
Yeah. Peter Dinklage is like the guy. He's the Harrison Ford of that franchise. He's getting the most work.
What has he done lately? After
The Dink?
Yeah, what has the Dink done? The Dink was in Wicked. Was he? Okay. All right. So the Dink is in a lot of stuff. Man. All right. So the Dink gets all the work.
Yeah,
And
he's the
nobody
Harrison
else.
Ford of the franchise. Everybody else is kind of like, who cares? Dinklage appeared in Hunger Games. He appeared most recently. Fuck, what was that movie?
Gwendolyn
Brothers,
Christie's in
which.
Severance, apparently. So,
Mhm.
yeah, Gwendolyn Christie he's been getting some work. Yeah, man, oh man, they're doing pretty well. She was in Fast and the Furious 19 Cars Crash. The thing about Fast and the Furious though, they never drop you. They just keep picking up actors until there's like 55 people on the poster. That's the whole idea.
I swear to God, every film he always says one last ride, and it never is. It's never the last ride, Preston. It's
Family,
never the last ride.
family. This is what family.
It's never the last ride.
One more. Man, oh man. All right. So I guess Carmine, I guess I can send you a copy of the Asha chapter. It's coming soon. It's getting worked. You excited about Asha?
You said someone was coming after Asha. No, you said someone was coming after
Davos.
Davos. Which one was coming after Davos?
I think it's probably going to be Mel.
Okay, that's what I was excited about. Because I don't know if Kenny, InGen Kenny, is still in the stream chat. I gave him a shout out during our conversation regarding doorways, but Kenny drew you that map. So I don't know if you want to use that map. It was very helpful from what I could see. And I'm actually excited for Mel. And of course, Mel, that's going to be the aftermath of Jon being stabbed.
Yeah. I mean, not immediately. I don't think we're going to do. I mean, I think we'll flash back to that, but I think we're going to enter in a situation where things have stabilized. Like I think we're going to start where things are stabilized at the wall, and then we're going to flash back and find.
Wait. You're going to do like a quick time skip from Jon being stabbed, like not in the immediate aftermath.
That's right.
Oh, interesting. Because I remember you, me, and Trey brainstorming about like what would happen like right after Jon got stabbed.
Yeah. She'll have to flash back to that, but that's just how that's how George writes and how chapters go. They never pick up like or very rarely pick up like immediately after. The only ones I can think of is like Sansa picking up immediately from Tyrion's perspective with the, or like the Red Wedding ones, the battle ones, the Red Wedding ones, and the Purple Wedding have stuff like immediate. But other than that, there's usually a break. You know, something happens and then a break happens, and you're like, how did they get here? You're in the middle of something, and you're like, how the fuck did they get here? And then you get a flashback to how they get there. You know,
Mr. Wumbo calling you out. He's so right.
what's that?
He's so right.
Who called me out? Oh,
Mr.
Asha is better than
Wumbo.
Arya for Davos.
No, 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 no. The order of the chapters that you want to write. It's Asha, Ariel, Davos, back to Ariel,
Yeah, back to
Melisandre,
Melisandre, back to
Ariel
Arya.
again, Sam, Ariel, Diddy.
No, it's now we're getting to a hard part because we're getting to some very difficult chapters to write. And let me see here if we'll bring up the thing real quick. So it's this difficult position where, you know, it's like I could go Daenerys, or I could go Mel, but those are really difficult. And then Sam, it's going to be a really great fun one, but it's going to take me a while to figure that out. And then Mercy, and then we're back to Hota. So we are back to Aereo soon. So it's not. Don't worry. Aereo's getting his time. Okay, Aereo's getting his time. But yeah, figuring out Dany though is going to be tough and then we're handling some very tough things here. Okay, Sam, meaning the sack of Old Town and his second mission with the candle. Hota, sack of Old Town. Cersei, her trial by combat. Jaime's trial by combat. Bran, hold the door. Fucking like it's some hard stuff that we're dealing here. And then once we're past there, then we can deal with like Victorian aftermath, Quentin aftermath, and move on. Get back to Elaine and where she is with the Vale armies and stuff like that. But yeah, each chapter I'm just like, oh my god, this is gonna be so hard. It's gonna be so hard.
Man, what is? I didn't see this. What is this? It's also fricked up how he said Davos' character was a failure because all his chapters are just people talking at him. Then goes nuts for Ariel. What? You said this?
I did say. I mean, it's a fair criticism. But that's yeah, you're right. I mean, look, George's Aereo chapters are not great. Come on, I think everybody knows that. I mean, it's really fun. There's some fun dialogue between the Sand Snakes, but like, yeah, there's not enough about Aereo's not a fucking character. He's the camera that rides. He's absolutely correct. Which is like specifically why we like Aereo in the fanfic is now a character. He's now doing stuff. So he's completely correct.
Yeah, you've given the Dornish storyline some legs beyond Arianne. Yeah.
Sure. No, I mean he's completely correct. In fact, I'll start referring to Davos as the smuggler that rides, or what the camera that rides, the camera that smuggles. The camera that smuggles.
You have an opportunity to do the funnest thing with Davos by taking him to Skagos and introducing all like them being, White Walker, other worshippers, and the first night, and sacrificing babies to the others and whatnot, like Craster. You have an opportunity to do some like really crazy satanic stuff over there.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be great. So it's all coming together slowly. Wish I could write fast. Wish we could do this faster, but okay, we'll get the. But I'm sure everybody's like getting back to Hota. Everybody just wants to get back to Hota. That's the real.
Is that a poll? Is that a poll you put up?
The poll. Remember when I put up a poll, which chapter do you want to get to next? And everybody voted overwhelmingly for Jaime, and he was literally the last one I went to on that list. I did everybody else before I got to Jaime. But we got him eventually. We got him. So All right, Carmine, thank you for joining me. Thank you, everybody else, for joining me. Thank you. And we will. I'll see you guys. See you guys next week. And look forward to you're seeing some doorways this week. So we'll talk to you soon. All right, bye.